is trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly, suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly, attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily, hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight on Rogue, I'm especially excited to have someone who has walked a road of healing and awakened to the horrors of those spaces in order to bring us a voice of reason amidst the chaos. A naturopath, an energy healer, and the creator of Yummy Mummy Emporium, Dr. Amanda Vollmer is here on Rogue Ways tonight, and I'm honored to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Before we get started, I always like to remind everyone that you can find a lot more content from me on my site at rogueways.org. If you would like a tarot reading, you can grab some there. I was very happy to see how many people chose to go that route after last week's episode about my journey through tarot. So those people have been, I think, pleasantly happy with that. And if you are someone who is seeking, then that is a place you can go, and I would love to help you. So check it out. You can buy my first novel, Sine Curve of Aeons, right now. It's direct from me and save some money. If you go to Amazon, it's $15 plus tax plus shipping. If you go through my PayPal, it's just $15 flat, and I will also inscribe it to you. And if you want to get it for free, you can sign up for Subscribe Star at any level besides the $1 level to support me, and you'll get a free copy shipped anywhere in the US. So take advantage of those offers. Lots of content on Subscribe Star. Thank you so much to all my subscribers. And for the people who are donating to PayPal, I'm soon going to turn off super chats because YouTube is horrible and evil and takes a bunch of money and hides the methods that money are kind of coming from you to me, and it's really impossible to determine like who gave what and how much of it actually got to me, and I am sick of dealing with that. So I'm going to wait till I get my end of February whatever cut out, so I can hope that as much people as gave money actually got to me as possible, and then I'm going to turn it off. So yeah, if you want to donate, it's way better to do it through PayPal. You can jump in the chat and say, I just donated to PayPal, and I'll give you the same attention as I would to a super chat, I promise. And I really do appreciate that. So whether you're buying a book or giving a donation to the show or purchasing a tarot, my PayPal is paypal.me/Corey.Sharman, spelled just like that. And I'll put it in the chat as well. And I just finished the sequel to this book a couple days ago, so soon you'll be able to get that beauty as well. Anyway, that is the end of my spiel for you. And I like to start with a pointless question of the episode. So, Dr. Amanda, what is your favorite number and why?
I have a few, but I would say typically I go for 3. I have a 369 thing, kind of like Tesla, but I like 3. I like trinities. I like triangles in the right way. I like, I don't know why. I just always like 3.
Wow. I just had a conversation with Michael Wan, who I don't know if you're familiar with, but he's a frequent guest on Rogue Ways and author of the Susquehanna Mysteries. And we talk many Sundays because we're working together on an event that we're putting together for this summer for the solstice. And we talked about how important numbers are for especially like synchronicities and, kind of your own personal numbers will show up at interesting times and sort of be this confirmation for you that you're on the path. And 3 is one of my numbers that has also been, like many people, but it's been something I've been kind of like focused on throughout my whole life. Like there's a lot of mysteries to this number 3, and it's everywhere. It's like ubiquitous. And so when my book that I just finished ended up being 333 pages and 33 chapters, and all of that was without me planning it. I couldn't have planned that if I wanted to. That's not how book writing goes. That blew my mind. So that's interesting that you bring up 3.
Very interesting. Wow. And we're on a new moon today as well in Pisces. So today's a very auspicious day.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was just told that is it oh my God, I already forgot.
Mercury retrograde starts.
Mercury retrograde, and then something in.
Oh yeah, there was.
In Aries?
There is something strong. I can't remember what it was either.
Yes.
There's a lot going on though.
There's a lot going on. And I think that energy, whatever I'm trying to remember, either the moon or the sun in like Aries or something is like why all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to finish this book. And then it just like happened.
We're ending Pisces and going into Aries.
I feel it.
Zodiac. We're at the end. The spring is the beginning of actually the true new year. So the real new year is spring, right? Is the Aries. Yeah.
So that'll be coming March 21st.
Yeah.
Or so.
Equinox time. Yeah.
Yay, the real new year is coming. That'll feel nice.
Nice. I don't know about you and how your weather is here, but in Minden, it's a very long winter. And by February, a lot of people are just very fatigued and really grouchy and they just want it to be over at this point. So I kind of feel like that a bit too.
Well, I'm a weirdo because I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and it's very damp and very gray most of the winter, most of the time, really. And so I just moved to Colorado, as we were talking about right before we started, and it is sunny here all the time. So people here are like complaining about how cold it is or how much snow there is. And I'm like, yeah, but the sun's out. Like, this is great, guys. And they're like, okay, crazy pants.
Special, very special. I think I can count the days of sun we've had this winter on my hands.
See, that's my normal life. I feel it. I feel really lucky to be here and be able to be outside in the sun really frequently. And I should stop talking about it because I guess too many people are moving here already.
Oh, really? Yeah, running away from California and weird vaccine mandates and all kinds of craziness going on.
Yes. I can't wait to talk about that with you. But before we get there, I was hoping a lot of my fans are really excited about you and about the videos that you do and the information that you put out. And so you were a hot, everyone wanted me to talk to you. And so I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about where you come from. Like, where did you kind of grow up? What was life like for little mini you?
Well, I'm a Canadian, so Ontario born and born into like Richmond Hill. I was born in Richmond Hill. Actually, it was called York back then, and I was born in this little hospital. And pretty standard 2.5. No, two kids. I was
2.5.
Standard average. But for me, I grew up in a pretty stable environment. We had enough money. I wasn't impoverished or anything. When I was about 8, I started to have certain mystical experiences.
Wow.
And to me, as an 8-year-old, actually that's the age that my daughter is now, and she's starting to have specific mystical experiences, which is really interesting. So at least I know I can guide her through it now. Whereas with me, I was really I actually thought that's what would happen to everybody.
That's what you do when you're a kid. You're like, this is everyone's experience.
Everyone has an invisible friend that walks with them. Everybody, when their invisible friend after dinner, you go outside to play, they show you how the earth works and how chakras work and how the trees eat energy from the air and all of these things. And I just thought that was perfectly normal. And as well, the moon looked really different to me. It looked like 5-dimensional, multiple colors. It was, I could speak to the moon. That was all normal to me. And then when a few years after, actually it must have happened earlier, but it was 8 when I really can remember. But it was a few years after when the moon said, and Jenny said, we have to go and you have to do this on your own. And I felt actually kind of betrayed at the time. I felt really upset about it. But that was one of my earliest, experiences of this, whatever this realm is. And so then, I went through the regular school system, and I ended up deciding that I loved animals a lot because I was very sensitive to plants and animals, and I didn't want to eat animals. When I was young, I just thought, oh my gosh, wait a second, somebody killed this animal and I'm responsible now because I'm eating it. And I was very emotionally delicate in a lot of ways. And so I made all these decisions when I was really young to, go vegetarian and also that I wanted to help heal animals. So I wanted to be a veterinarian. Actually, I wanted to be an artist first, but then I thought I could still do my art and animals.
That's exactly where so many people end up, right? They're like, I guess I could always do that part for fun and do this other thing for, my life's purpose or whatever.
Do it all.
Yeah.
Whatever. But it came down to that decision. But I was going through high school as arts. So then I had to change my direction into sciences, and that meant me spending longer time in high school. Now in Ontario, we actually have grade 13 at that time, so it was an OAC year. So that I had to do that plus another half year. So I went right into university in a January start, and I had to take extra university as well to catch up on all the sciences. And they called me grandma when I was in high school, because
Wow.
I had all these spares, and they would come and they would sit with me, and I would tutor everybody, and that was just, I already had this leadership thing going on really early on, and I made friends with everybody, so I wasn't in any clique. I just was one of those people who, knew the geeks and the mods and the punks and the wops, as they call them. I grew up with a lot of Italians. And that was that. And then I went out west to Alberta, and that was really great, and more out your way. And it was a real eye-opener for me, and I loved it out there. I wanted to stay out there. But then I came back to look at possible schools for veterinary college, and I was mentoring with an incredible holistic vet, also an acupuncturist and also a naturopath, Dr. Stephen Marsden and his wife Karen. And because when you're going to be a vet, you got to do all these hours. You got to have so many volunteer hours. You're already a pro at all these things because of the hundreds of hours that you've had to give your free time up to vets and to pet stores and to you name it. So I'd even worked at the University of Edmonton in the laboratories doing with vivisection and helping with the studies and everything. So I it's like I had this experience of gathering all of these pieces and being able to put together puzzles of what's going on, because I have a degree, a Bachelor of Science in genetically modified organisms.
Wow.
Because that's what I needed. The counselor said you need to get that in order to go to vet school. I don't know. I wouldn't have picked that.
Yeah.
But here I am in lab, making GMOs.
Yeah.
And so I got to talk to Monsanto reps. I got to talk to, all of the big agribusiness heads and question them about what they were doing.
Wow.
And so it really was, the way it formed me, all of these experiences was quite unique. And I don't know how to turn off my blooping. Sorry.
It's okay.
I have a new computer and it bloops at me every now and then. I'm like, I thought I turned off all notifications.
Yeah. That's like mine will pop up all these little notifications like while I'm live streaming. So I'm like, wait, now everybody knows like that the download DLL whatever is safe or whatever it's telling me.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'll close off a couple of maybe that. I don't know. But anyway, so that was then Dr. Marsden. I went to the vet, interview. I got in, and they don't accept very many. And so I was like, all right, I got to the interviews. This is great, right? I was so excited. And this was University of Guelph, so I had to go back to Ontario for that. And I'd done traveling as well in between, because I knew I'd have to take a break between another school, like my whole life school. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot, right? I mean, when do I stop and see the world? But they had this good cop, bad cop routine. And the guy who was the bad cop, he was like, well, holistic medicine is just quackery. We can't have you in here, messing around with our, ancient, whatever. He was just terrible. And I knew at that moment, there was no way he was going to let me in. And my heart sank, and I felt like my dreams were crushed. And I got this feeling that I don't belong, and it made me feel very marginalized. And then when I told Dr. Marsden, he said, why don't you go to naturopathic college? Because you know what? Maybe after you finish that, you want to go and do what I did and go and get your vet, and maybe it'll have changed by then. And I was like, geesh, I'm going to be like 80 by the time I get out of school,
Yeah.
but okay, fine. And so it was just really, he encouraged me to do that. And I fell in love with homeopathy working there. I fell in love with traditional Chinese medicine. I saw how potent it was. I saw people walk in with animals that couldn't walk or half dead. He would do some acupuncture, give some Chinese herbs, and they would walk out of there.
Wow.
And I would see animals in distress, and they just pop some little sugar pills inside the mouth of the animal, and they're revived,
Wow.
and things that, I was privy to, and it really changed. Not to say I wasn't already very holistically minded, but more on the botanicals.
Yeah.
More of, I knew what nature could provide and how, and I learned that on my own. And then, but from all of that, I started to really study homeopathy a lot and really look into Chinese medicine. And then in school, it happened like that as well. And I was also marginalized even in naturopathic college because I'm even fringe to that group.
Wow.
Also, that became very political and very difficult. And then I had issues with the board, and that got all out of control. And I'm not a licensed practitioner as a result. And at first, I was very upset about that because I went to school for 4 years and I got my tests done and I did all this, and I felt again that feeling like I got from the University of Guelph. This, you don't belong here, you know, this marginalizing sensation. I'm like, what is this about? It's like this rejection that I've sort of carried throughout my life in various situations.
Right.
And, you know, all of life really is a type of psychological, it's either a psychological experiment or a psychological reflection where there's some parts of you that you're either bringing home to yourself or trying to bring things from subconscious into conscious and become fully integrated. And so there's these things that that come at you again and again to help you see something and question it and focus on it so that you can bring it to the forefront and integrate it and then move on from it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was always aware of a lot of the things that of the mind and the psyche. I did a lot of meditation. I did Vipassana meditation in India. It's a 10-day silent retreat. I did all different kinds of yogic, went to India to learn some yogic styles, and it's been quite a journey. And then I got into this really amazing situation that was very rare, to have a huge building, a custom built house with a pool inside and 4 stories, and it was just a humongous building. And I wanted to build a community. I really wanted other practitioners with me. I wanted all kinds of classes, all kinds of retreats, all kinds of things that were health aware. And I've always felt that I also wanted to teach other practitioners. I wanted to be the teacher of teachers in some senses. Wow. And so that was the dream, right? I had the dream, and it manifested. It was there. And then I learned about, dark things at that time, how people can be jealous, which I didn't, it wasn't even a thought form for me.
Wow.
How people can pretend to be your friend because they actually hate you.
You made it to that point before that happened to you. How old were you?
I was, that was right after naturopathic college. So I was probably 30. I'm 45 now, so I was probably 34.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm kind of jealous. But
see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was a very interesting and intense experience, because also even right in the first year of naturopathic college, I was being put in situations where I was meeting really important people in the industry. Yeah. I got to meet Abraham Hoffer. I got to meet, these Carolyn Dean, like in my first year. I had a hotel room with her at the Orthomolecular conference. She said, just come stay with me. And it was this, everything felt very magical. And that was 2005. And why I met them was because I followed my spirit. I followed my soul direction. And I think people get so locked up that they can't even hear what themselves, and they lose what they're here to do. Because everyone has a purpose. Okay. And I think when you're miserable, you're not on your purpose. And I mean, sometimes you can still be miserable on your purpose, but it's not the same.
Right. I totally know what you mean.
Yeah. You can be sad on your purpose because you're witnessing people are sad. But what I mean is your fundamental, what you're there to do.
Yes. And
when my first year in school, I found out about Codex Alimentarius, and I found out about
what
pharmaceutical. It's called Codex Alimentarius.
Oh, why do I know that? What is that?
Well, it's a coda, which is a documentation from industry that basically is trying to control and regulate supplements and nutraceuticals.
So it's not the DS whatever.
Déchet, it's different than déchet. It's a
Okay.
bit different. It feeds into that, but déchet is what you guys have in the States.
Okay.
So, yeah, we don't have that here in Canada.
Okay.
But you're on the right line of thinking. So
It's systematized.
Is it a food, a drug? That déchet is like, what's a food? What's a drug? What's regulated? How it's regulated? Those kinds of things.
Okay.
But Codex Alimentarius is more like international in a lot of senses. Or, we have these globalist maniacs that are trying to take everything away from us, and genocide and eugenics and all these crazy agendas. And that's from that entity. Okay, so it's a little bit more nefarious. And I found out that our own people, okay, which I saw as colleagues, as family, as people like me who just want to, take Henry Lindlard's naturopathic principles, the true naturopathic principles, the nature doctor as teacher principles, and make them very strong in society. And I found out that's not even close to what naturopathic medicine is, that they are, totally usurped. And they're sending, they want to be more like MDs. Okay, so rather than going, MDs are the opposite of us, and we are different than that, and we are going to forge ahead our own path. Many things happened to taint, just like what they did with the Chiropractic Association, just like they've done. If they can't bomb them away or kill them outright, then they're just going to go subversive.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And it's
systematize it, and through all kinds of usually economic motivations, like, oh, well, if you want the insurance to pay for it, then you have to do it like this, 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 and this. And you're like, but now it's not helpful anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I can see through a lot of that stuff, because I guess my intuition is strong enough that I can say, well, that stinks. Whatever just happened there, PU, right? And so I followed the stink. Like, something smells in here and I'm going to find it.
And then they were like, cut off that lady's nose, quick.
pretty much. And that was the shocker for me. And that's where I was still naive. I still had those wafts of youth with me but everyone just wants everybody to get along and have fairyland, and
they must be misunderstanding.
Yes, exactly. Right. And that's where I was vulnerable, and how this whole thing, for me happened. But, I started to blow the whistle pretty loud, and I was talking about it pretty loud.
Yay.
And I was going to conferences, and I was handing out flyers to naturopaths to try to let them know that we can't allow this, what's now called NPN numbers here in Canada, which they went ahead and did, which means that once Health Canada now controls and regulates absolutely every supplement that's on the market, then they can decide, well, so somebody over in Pharmaland can say, hey, this really good supplement that works on a lot of people, it's really competing with one of our drugs. Can we just review that? And then they'll say, you'll send a letter to the company and say, sorry, we've reviewed this product. You're not allowed to sell it anymore if you don't make these changes or whatever. It's giving them all the power to say what can be on the market and not. And that is basically a dictatorship as far as I'm concerned, because these are things that are safe. They haven't killed people. Their drugs and their vaccines, on the other hand, kill people. Yeah. And so they're good. I mean, you regulate that then. Yeah. Because you're killing people. Right. But this stuff, leave it in our hands. Yeah. Let the people decide whether they want to take niacin versus niacinamide, or a vitamin D supplement, or whatever, right? Or if somebody like me, I make over 150 natural products right now. Awesome. I want to go ahead and make a skin cream and put DMSO in it, because that's what I do, and I understand the chemistry of it, and I have a background in science. Then it shouldn't matter. All that should matter is that I have a clean technique, right? Clean technique, proper principles, proper ratios, things that in the cosmetics industry or whatever industry you want to put it in. I'm doing proper procedures, right? I'm not putting boogers in my stuff, right? Right. Okay. And also when it hits the market and somebody's using it, the feedback isn't ow, or I got a rash, or I'm hurting, or they're going, oh my God,
This is
I
helping
love
so
it.
much.
Yeah, thank you. Amazing. And that's all I get is feedback. And there's other laws, for fraud. There's redundant laws. So it's not about safety or protection of the people, which they always use that. They always come at us like that's what they're doing. We're just trying to protect the little people. Yeah, no, really, you're trying to protect your own interests and line your pockets and yeah.
And it's amazing that they can point at one case where something went wrong. It's almost always not actually related to the naturopathic method or, but they'll say like, oh my God, look at this one person had this one thing happen that was like barely related and everyone should freak out and stop using this method forever. But like hundreds or thousands of millions, however many people can be harmed by something like vaccines and no one cares at all. Just keep doing it. Just trust us. Just blindly move along.
Well, it's completely hypocritical, obviously. And those of us with a brain know that it has, it's on purpose. They know, a lot of them know what's going on. And they are either controlled where they can't go against that, or they lose their jobs and that's too scary for them, which is really a shame, because they come work for me or something. I'm offering jobs. I mean, I'm sure there's other jobs like that. What I mean is, they're locked into it or entrapped into it or something to keep that lie going.
Or it's just in their head too that like this is the safest route for me and my family or my vision of my future or whatever, and so I'm going to toe the line.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the echelon that they're operating from.
True.
I mean, we have a huge cult. I call it a cult because you're not allowed to think in a cult. You just follow along with the doctrine of the said cult, and you're not allowed to go outside that boundary, or you lose all of the benefits. And I've done quite a few videos on my YouTube channel about cults, and I'm actually going to write a book on cults. I actually have written the first draft of it, but I've learned when you write, I mean, you're a writer, so when you write and then you go learn stuff and then time elapses and then you come back to that project and you're like, oh my gosh, I have learned so much more than where I was at with that. And that was like first platform, right?
Right.
And now that I almost want to scrap that and start over because I've learned so much more. And so it's sort of like that with this particular topic.
But that's going to be a really good and helpful book if that's how it's going, because I feel like the universe kind of does that on purpose. They're like, get this out so you've got it, you've made the construct or whatever, but then now you're going to get all this other stuff and now you figure out how to put that in. And here's some more, by the way. And like,
yeah. And
you wouldn't have like undertaken something so large from the beginning if you knew how big it was going to be.
Well, that was with the DMSO book. It just kept getting larger and larger and larger and larger. And the editors were like, I know you have a scientific mind, but you can't write like this because we're targeting the layperson. So you got to tone it down. And it was heartbreaking for me because it was really one of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do.
Just to stop that process.
Well, when you're through the amount of schooling I've gone through, you're pretty much trained to write a certain way.
Yeah.
And this was writing a completely different way. And so I had to really go against my own mind all the time, like through the entire book writing process. And I mean, I'd do a chapter and I'd be exhausted afterward. I'd be like, I have to take a very long break.
Yeah.
I might have to go smoke something, or I don't know. I wish I could do that. I'm too much of a lightweight. But
Me too. That's why I'm like, I was telling you before we started that I'm like a little bit high right now, but my high is like, I have this really high CBD, really low THC tincture that I take when I'm in pain. And that gets me like super wonked out. Whereas other people would not even notice. They'd be like, what? That had THC in it? I can't even tell. But I'm like,
much for me either.
But I was glad you brought up DMSO before we started, because I always forget that I have this cream and that it works really well on like a deep bone pain and deep muscle pain that like other methods don't work on. And I totally forget about it. And you mentioned it and I was like, oh my God, yes. And so I put some on and I'm like still in pain, but it's better. And I'm like, oh, thank you.
Better. The thing with DMSO, ideally, is if you can get onto it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Or preventatively, because it stops, once the inflammation is really full, now what the DMSO is going to do is it's going to open blood flow and try to mobilize and move that. But the pain signals and all of the interleukins and everything, they're all zinging still. So it's got to mobilize, move that through the liver. It's a process now.
Yeah.
But if you get it at the beginning, or you get it before, or like if you have a prodrome or sort of a sign it's coming, and you just start to load, then you can prevent it. And that's what's really amazing about its use.
Are you talking about taking it in orally?
Both ways.
Oh, because I just have the lotion, and I had never heard of the lotion. And my acupuncturist last year at some point was like, have you ever tried this? And I was like, no. And she was like, okay, buy some, use it, see if it works. And it worked really, really well on my sort of arthritic pain as a topical application.
I would say in that case to, also do it internally.
Okay.
It's the dose for internal typically is 1 teaspoon of pure DMSO in 5 ounces of water or juice. And the water should be distilled or very pure, and the juice equally so, just nothing with, sugars in it and unnatural things in it.
And do you sell that, or is that something that people can find on?
Yep.
Okay.
My website's yummymummyemporium.org. The new one will be a .ca. I'm finally got a .ca. And that's why I bought this particular computer I'm on now, because it's humongous. It's kind of overwhelming, but I wish I had it when I wrote the book, because I can see 2 screens at once.
Oh, that's nice.
That's really nice for book writing when you're editing and when you're, researching everything all the time.
We have like 6 things open at once, and
yeah, more like 26, but yeah. So I wanted to go back to part of what I was saying before, when at the beginning of my first year of naturopathic college.
Yeah.
So when I found out about Codex, okay, and I then immediately found out that there was a meeting with Health Canada in Ottawa, so at the parliamentary buildings in Ottawa, to protest this process, that they were going to begin the NPN system. And there was not one naturopath on any level that was going to speak out about it or go as a representative to it.
Right.
There was a representative, so silence, that's it. No one from CAND, OAND is going to attend. That's it. So I elected myself.
Good job.
And I got on a bus and I went to Ottawa. And I showed up in that room with these incredible, most of them were orthomolecular practitioners. Now, orthomolecular medicine is when you use very high doses of vitamins and minerals to treat disease. Okay, so more so than just saying your regular oral route, you do a lot of IV, or you do, extreme doses, because at certain times or certain illnesses, that's what's warranted, like schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Abraham Hoffer was pinnacle in understanding that you could use niacin and vitamin C to heal schizophrenia.
Wow.
I mean, this is like...
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, that's big stuff.
That is.
He knew Linus Pauling. He knew these people who were in this industry, and it was just amazing to meet everyone, there. Wow. And that was pinnacle for me. But here I am. I just show up, and I'm like, I'm representing naturopaths, and vitamins and minerals, they don't kill people. They save lives. And if you, where's the body count? There's no evidence. If you have evidence of harm, that's one thing. But if you can't prove evidence of harm, then you have no case. And this is basically how these things work. So where are you going at it from a safety standpoint? It's like, yeah. So, I mean, obviously we spoke what we felt, but they didn't care. But we still have to try.
Yes.
We still have to express
Register your dissent. Right.
Right. And so the Orthomolecular Conference in 2005 was happening right that next day. And so I got invited to that conference. And so I learned I met the Gersons.
Wow.
I met Charlotte Gerson, that was just profound for me. I met her son, Howard. these were people deep in the belly of it, and it was really eye-opening for me. So that was that shaped me a lot. So, every so often in your life you have an event and that shapes you, and that very much shaped my viewpoint on this medicine and what I was learning. And graduation then was in that, right out of graduation, wrote the exams right into this big situation.
Wow.
And it was really crazy and kind of terrible, actually, the way it all fell apart. So ended up that when all the rubble settled, I was alone. I lost, my boyfriend, respect of all my colleagues. It was just like, when Eckhart Tolle says all of a sudden he was just sitting on a park bench and he was homeless and that was it. Like his whole life crumbled before him. And a lot of people on a spiritual path, that happens where, right? They go from riches to rags, or
you got to go through the darkness to come out the other side.
But they often will say, they lost everything, right? They came into a nothingness in their life. And that was where I was at. And I was actually very raw vegan at that time. I was meditating a lot. I was working on, those aspects, those shadow aspects of myself. And I had a spiritual teacher show up at my door, and she stayed with me for an entire year.
Because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
And it literally was like that.
I know. People think it's like just a saying. I'm like, no, it's literally true.
It was like that. Yeah.
So when people are like, well, I'm ready, I'm like, I guess not. Or you don't know who your teacher is.
Yeah, that's true. And I know there are situations where the teacher, was unable to show up.
That's rad, though. She literally just, I said she. Was it a she or a he?
It was a she.
Okay.
She knocked on the door.
Wow.
And, it was a lot. I had to let go of a lot. I had to face a lot of things in my ego that I wasn't seeing. I mean, it was a complete deconstruction of my ego, and maybe to the point where I took it too far, because there is a functional part to the ego.
Yeah.
So I
you can't let go completely.
Right. And then but I think that dissolution of it is important, because then you actually rebuild it in a fresh way, or in a truer way, and what's not you, or what was a mechanism of maybe survival, or a mechanism adaptation from a trauma or whatever, and that doesn't come back with you.
Yeah, this is like the Tower card in tarot, right? The foundation shakes and everything that isn't you crumbles away, but everything that's left is like the best possible pieces to keep and carry forward.
Pretty much that's the card I walked through.
Yes.
Yeah, to a T. Like down to my dog died. I mean, like it was everything. And so that pinnacle component then meant I was responsible. That was my adulthood.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of people who are adults or in adult bodies, but they're still children inside.
Absolutely.
And that was the moment in which I had to take responsibility for myself on a whole new level, and I had to start to adult myself. I had to be an adult. I had to make very strict decisions and be disciplined and these types of things, do things that might not want to do, but I have to do. And of course, if you can imagine that you have like these $1 million situations and all of these loans, and all of a sudden I have nothing.
Yeah.
I went into such a deep learning curve on a whole other, so that I have all the health stuff, and now I get pulled into common law, admiralty law, all types of court situations. I'm learning all about law all of a sudden. And I had another teacher come and literally stay with me for I think it was about 6 months, and teach me every little aspect of free man on the land and accepted for value. And I mean, I did it all. What bonds are, what trusts are, how to write off things without using fiat currencies, what fiat currency is, gold standard, all the history. And it was just like, what? Okay.
And right on the heels of the other things too, which is pretty amazing.
Right. And at that point, I wrote off over $200,000 worth of loans.
I need to learn this skill.
Yes, and I have helped a lot of people write off credit card debt, because that's the easiest one to do.
Okay.
So if you have a credit card in default and you've got that sold off to a third party, depending on where you are, so it's different for you in the States than it is for Canada. There's different laws and things, but like in Ontario, there's a statute of limitations of 2 years. So
Wow.
if you have and had an original contract, and then a third party bought that, it's null and void. You don't have a contract with the third party. You don't engage with them.
Nice.
And if they try to come after you, you just let that happen for a couple of years, and then if either you let them take you to court, or you just call them out on the fact that the statute has passed and never call you again, right? Because it's over.
Yeah. Wow.
And a lot of people don't know that, and that's why you don't contract with them. So people start contracting. Oh, I'm sorry, I only have $10. Can you take that?
Ooh.
No. Now you just make a new contract. Now you are beholden to them.
Ah,
So I have helped lots of people, but
that's awesome.
then I found myself pregnant, which is what happened. And well, that's a longer story. But anyway, I was in Toronto, pregnant, and I'm already an empath. I'm already super sensitive. Now you put those hormones in my body, I'm like, I have to leave here.
And another being in your body. Like, yeah.
No, I knew anyway. Toronto fluoridates its water. And just that alone, I'm not going to raise my baby in Toronto with fluoridated water. I'm going to go to a place that doesn't have fluoride in their water, period.
Right.
And when I found this place up north, a couple hours north, I had a friend up here, could work, and I just made the leap of faith and did it. And the community was really supportive and, really surrounded me with a lot of things that I could need. And it was part of me really learning to ask for help, because I grew up very strong, and I grew up always helping others and being the go-between all the time, and denying a lot of my own needs. And then at this point I had to actually surrender and ask for help and be okay with that. You're vulnerable when you have a baby. So that was great. I had a water birth, a home water birth. Cool. I had a Lotus birth. A Lotus birth is when you don't cut the umbilical cord. You just let it fall off naturally.
Wow. How long does that take?
It depends on the method you're using to desiccate it, because you do use some herbals to dry out so it doesn't rot, right?
Yeah.
So there's a method of preparation that you use. So it can take anywhere between 3 and 7 days. And of course, my girl went all the way.
All the way to 7.
7 days. And by 7 days, I'm like, okay, this thing can fall off now.
Wow. Because you have to carry it around with her in the same time. Yes. Is it huge? Or is it desiccated, it gets much smaller?
Yes.
Okay.
It's about like that, right?
Wow.
And desiccated. And you wrap it in muslin, and then you usually either wrap it in with their blanket or swaddle it with them or whatever, because the theory and the understanding is that they know that babies have a relationship with their own placentas.
Yeah.
So they'll hug them, cuddle them, kiss them, lick them. They know that it's precious.
Yeah.
And the act, part of my path was all about nonviolence.
Yeah.
And so this was a violent act to just suddenly.
It seems horrifying. Even just imagining it seems horrifying. I don't know. I think I'm empathic as well, and I can't understand how someone can just do that and feel like that was the best choice. Good job. Let's move on.
I knew that that was comfortable for me to do. I just knew that I wanted it as gentle as possible. And even the act of giving birth underwater, you're really going from the baby's going from a water environment into a water environment.
Yeah.
Avoiding this air shock, that's called. And it's so gentle. I mean, once you get that head through that hole, you're that's it. That's the part. You're like, okay. Go through. And once the head's out, you get this euphoria feeling. I almost think that's why a lot of people are addicted to piercings and tattoos, because you go through this pain.
Yeah.
But then after, there's a euphoric high almost.
Yes.
That happens.
Yeah. It's like a trance.
Well, it's an endorphin high, I guess, right? Because that's usually what happens under pain, after pain. And so after, I'm like, where the head, birth head, and I'm in this euphoria, and we, baby's head stays underwater until the next pushes. Like you don't raise them up into the air yet. And what you're really supposed to do is let them come into the water, and you wait. And you wait until they do this like flick. They'll do this reflex like that, which means they're ready to air. And then you gently pull them up, and then they'll take.
And they don't have to smack them and like all this crap that seems crazy.
Yeah. Whatever that crazy. Hang them upside down and nothing like that. And yeah, she looked a bit weird because she's been in a watery environment since the beginning. But yeah, it was quite a beautiful experience. And I didn't think I was going to be a mom. I wasn't really planning to be a mom in my life, because my animals were my babies, and I was trained in university. It's a very leftist ideology, so a lot of that's another cult that'll be in the book in and of itself. And I didn't know that going into university, but it's very environmentally aware and all of these things, and save everything and whatever. And it's also well, why should you have a kid? There's so many people on the earth. There's so many kids without parents. So who are you to?
The biggest harm to the environment, they say, is having a baby.
Right. And that was before I knew that a bunch of eugenicists rule us, and they hate the population, and they're trying to do population control, and they don't want you to have babies because it's easier for them to dump that down, as per the Georgia Guidestones, their requirements. If you don't know about that, then look up Georgia Guidestones.
Google it. Yeah, I mean, that worked on me too. Like I was completely caught up in that, and I was even, a communist agitator. I was in the Communist Revolutionary Party, and I thought giving birth would have been the most horrible thing you can do for the party and for the environment. And I'm a pretty smart individual, but I believed these, tenets that they set out and these philosophies that they set out, and felt very strongly about them. And then I had slowly kind of started to see through that. And now I'm just amazed at how well that works. But, it's been this intentional conditioning since, I don't know, at least like the 70s, the 60s. I mean, the game plan is who knows how old really, but this specific conditioning to become sort of socialist, communist, and environmentalist has been at least since about then. And here we are, and it's like full kind of swing with people, breaking down in the streets over feelings and whatever. It's just getting crazy.
It is crazy. I just wanted someone was saying on my live feed, because I'm doing the live Facebook, that it was like something I don't think I was. So I was just trying to see what was going on.
I see tons of people in my chat, but my restream says that 0 people are watching this right now. So that's bullshit. It started doing this to me recently now, where it just tells me that almost no one is watching. And I'm like, I know that's not true. But it had done this to me when I was way back on Google Hangouts through YouTube too. So it's like just slowly they start to unroll different various ways of fucking with me. And so here's another one, but
it's amazing how they are getting away with this. It's really, I got pretty angry when I was shadow banned, because I get all of these individuals who are put out a YouTube video and they get huge amounts of views and interaction, and I got to fight every time just to have, some showing, and it's really unfair. And I don't know, with Facebook buying out Instagram, now that's started to happen with Instagram.
Yep.
I used to get a certain amount of attention on a post on average, and it's halved now.
Yep.
So I've actually been working with TikTok more so lately, because I feel like I can get a better reach, because they haven't shadow banned there.
Yeah, maybe that'll last for a while. Good idea.
Maybe. But it's amazing that we have this type of a system that has been really trying to squash truth and squash natural, medicine, and for so many, for hundreds of years. I mean, kill our indigenous, kill our elders, so that the youth can't find out what the game is, right?
Yeah.
If you can get a culture, I think their goal is if they can get a generation that is really in the cult deeply and can't ask around
Yeah.
of what happened in the history, because they rewrite the history all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you go search it online, if you don't know how to search it and they're using their parameters ever so tightly, you'll only get the stuff they want you to read anyway.
And even if you are a pro and come from back in the day and know how to use search terms and all the like Boolean whatever, and you're in there, like they're still able to now keep that all way more hidden and less accessible, even if you know exactly what you're looking for. So it's pretty terrifying. And that I like that you brought up this, you know, killing our elders and this assisted suicide and other methods of taking out our elders. Because it reminds me of my friend Benjamin Balderson, who talks about how alchemically, you know, we're being sort of cut off at the root, you know, and they are our root. Like our elders are literally our root. That's where we stemmed from and came from. And so even on a like psycho-spiritual level, this is a intentional, you know, distracting or disconnecting us from what's important and where we can get all the information we need, not just on this like literal level, but I think like spiritually as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a spiritual war
Right.
happening that we're playing out in the physical. I mean, if you want to get any action, really, you got to go on the inside to do all the work.
Boop, boop.
So that's really where you really affect it. And I think that's why I've had a lot of attack and a lot of where, you know, like in the Matrix when the dude, whatever his name is, pops into every other person.
Yes.
So it's like I can see when I'm talking with someone and that sort of happens to them.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. and it's like, oh yeah. So they're not going to listen or hear the conversation now. They're not going to be open to that because
it's amazing. And it's the same thing. You can think of it on like multiple different levels. It's like a spiritual thing happening where they're allowing some other sort of spiritual energy into them to take over for that moment. Or you can think of it as like the literal programming and kind of mind control that's been going on for their whole lives that sort of like is triggered into like functioning in that moment. Or, you know, there's all these ways you can look at it, but it's all the same really. And it is happening on all those levels also. So it's not wrong to look at them in any of those ways. And it's terrifying because when we're all sort of surrounded by people who are willingly at some level performing this, it's like that's what makes their system effective, you know?
Well, you know, the thing is, and this is what comes down to, is actually we're the ones with the power and we're the ones with the emotional potency that they harvest. And if we can get control of that, they are going to go downhill pretty quick.
Yes.
That's the good news. Just we have to get enough of us to that stage where we really just can knock them down one by one. But they're trying to fast track their little game now with their little fake Wuhan virus, you know, hopes. And they're using 5G to try to murder people. That's really what they're doing.
I was going to ask you what you thought about that idea that it's not actually a virus at all, but that this is 5G rollout.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And this is the effects of it.
Oh yeah, and it's in South Korea. South Korea rolled out 5G late last year as well. You know, you're only going to see this particular effect in 5G rollout areas. You're not going to. I'm not going to get it up here.
Yeah,
no 5G. It's not going to happen. And they're also finding that animals are dying like crazy too.
Yeah, and you're like, how does it jump to every single type of animal?
Lie. They've been regurgitating and recycling their lies over and over, and that's one of their weaknesses, is that if you are keen, you can catch a pattern, right? You can see their patterning, and their symbols also undo them. They are right. They always do their stupid whatever.
Yeah.
Like all this, like,
you're like, what the hell is this? Whoever is just like
it's, you know, their downfall is because they're religious.
Yeah.
They're religious, and that's they have to blast that onto people.
They have to claim all the things they're doing in various ways, and yeah. Good point.
And so what it means is, and they also have to follow specific spiritual law, which means they have to announce. They can do it very covertly, but they do have to announce what they're going to do way ahead of time. Because we told them. We told them in that book by
they had a choice. Yeah.
that we were going to do this, and they still whatever. You know? And yes, because they didn't say no, because that's called tacit agreement. Tacit is when
that's called rape. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, when they say, "Hey, you're a poo-poo face," and if you don't say, "No, I'm not a poo-poo face," then automatically it's yes, you're a poo-poo face.
So childish.
But you have to actually say no,
Yeah.
right? And that's the thing. So I like that we are saying no more.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that more. Like there are more protests, right? And it was happening in China as well, by the way, and now it's not because that was a very convenient time to switch on their 5G and get their incinerators going with the garbage and make sure that everybody can't breathe well. And maybe the first case of flu was just a regular flu, like they all like how many thousands of them die from the flu every year.
Right.
And then they just made one up and scared everybody, and everyone started putting a mask on, and now they're getting even less oxygen.
Good point.
These people are getting blasted by fields that are causing their blood to rouleau or go into coin-like stacks, right? So that's already an oxygen carrying problem.
Huh.
And then they have incinerators incinerating garbage, right? Because they already had a pollution problem. That's one of the reasons they're protesting, right? And because they're already dying from respiratory diseases. And then they have carbon monoxide, which then reduces their oxygen carrying capacity on top of that. And then you go and put a mask on that. And now you're rebreathing your own carbon dioxide and you're getting even less oxygen. That's why people were just passing out, just dropping like flies, right? Why? They can't get any oxygen, of course.
So, and then someone was saying too that the 5G somehow is affecting the actual oxygen molecules. Have you heard anything about this?
Well, I haven't gone into some of the deeper study of what exactly those microwaves are going to do, and not just that one system. You've got to consider there's 4G, there's 3G, there's 2G, there's all layers of, I called it the homie G's in one of my videos. All the homie G's are hanging out and crossing one another, and that is going to do a lot of DNA damage as well, which we already know. This is not news. This is studied. We know that it does that. It breaks off bits of DNA that actually then become cancerous later because those bits will float off and will situate themselves somewhere in the body. And all they need is to catch a little plastid cover, a little protein cover, and now they're a cell of their own. And everything wants to live, and it can divide and do all kinds of things in the body. So
Wow.
It's like I watch this horror show and I totally understand it, and it upsets me that I feel that not very many people can see that.
Yeah.
And I think breaking through the germ theory lie is very important, because if you don't uncover the lies and work through them, right, for yourself, because everyone goes through a different process when they've been hit with two different pieces of information that conflict, right? You'll get your cognitive dissonance for a while, but then you go, wait a second, that doesn't hold water really.
Yeah.
And this does, and that's making sense, but then all the theory that this was related to now doesn't make sense. So now I've got to go back to the drawing board and figure this out, and that takes some time. But we really need to get that through our heads, that germs are not the cause, they're the result of disease. And we've known that for a very long time, and that's the suppressed information, right?
So is it that our immune system has been degraded, or our nutrition is low, or whatever, and that's what allows the germs to affect us?
Well, you have to understand, if you have a living organism which is full of all kinds of a microbiome, so we have within us life, we are life, but we also have other life symbiotic with us that is of us, it's part of us. If we didn't have the microbes in our gut, we didn't have the microbes in our lungs and in every other section of our bodies, we wouldn't actually be alive. And when you know that all of nature, every part of nature, even everything you can see in your own space, will be covered in bacteria, will be covered in particles of bacteria that they're calling viruses. They're actually parts of bacteria. And parasites are everywhere. Those are things that can be I find parasites way more of an issue, okay, than whatever they're talking about. But what happens is when you have inflamed state in the body and you have tissue damage. Now, you can have tissue damage that's natural. So say a growing child, they're going to have to break down tissue and build new tissue, and they're doing that more rapidly, right? And that's when children get certain things when they're young. They may have certain expressions because the materials are being pushed out through the skin, and that's the easiest way to get rid of all of that turnaround of debris, right? If the nutrition is strong, then the body will maintain and manage that in the most resource friendly way, meaning it'll go out through the liver, it'll go out through the kidneys, it won't be seen. However, if the body is deficient and the secondary mechanisms of removal have to take place, that's when you start to get the rashes and the asthma and the going out through the lungs, going out through the skin, because it's not going out through other mechanisms. So that's why some people will still be going through growth spurts, but they won't express it the way someone else is who's not eating well or eating a lot of garbage, right? And it's the bacterium will come into a space to break down the dead, dying, and damaged tissue, because that's what these microbes do in nature. They break down our garbage for us. If they didn't exist, we would just be living on piles of garbage everywhere, right? Because all of the fungus, all of these things, they break down the stuff that we don't want anymore, right? It's like, I always say the analogy is, if you make garbage and you put it outside and then the flies start to come, did the flies cause the garbage? Well, no, but the flies are coming to help break down the garbage. But it's like what doctors do is they go, hey, a fly, you bad fly, you made all this garbage, you bad fly. Now we have to kill you. We're going to spray you. We're going to kill you, you baddie. And that's how dumb. I mean, that's literally what they're doing, just on a micro level. It's that stupid. Like, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
That's how dumb they are, that they can't place cause and effect. They have it completely twisted around.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just because you have an artifact that you're labeling as a virus coming off of someone's tissue, that, by the way, you're looking under a microscope, that you had to stain it, you had to put it under heat. It's not living. You're not watching it happen in the moment. You had to manipulate it to see anything anyway, right? You're not even using the proper microscope to understand what's happening in the body. Very easy to take particles and then go ahead and tell a story. Let's just tell a story.
Yeah.
One day, little Johnny was walking down the road, and he tripped and he fell and he broke his toe. And then when he got home, he said he tripped, and he said, did you fall upon a log? Was it a log? Was it a rock? What was it? And then there are all these theories come about how little Johnny broke his toe. And some people have little science experiments to prove it was a rock. And some have little science experiments to prove it was a log. Then they fight for 40 years, you know. And that's like how the germ theory and the terrain theory came about in a roundabout way, because scientists had other agendas. And it was nice for industry to go, hey, you know, it's better if we tell them that it's the cause, because now we can sell them antibiotics and vaccines and all our drugs, and we can name everything as a new condition, and we can have all these books with all these fancy names of lists of all these symptoms, and they can all be various and different. We can have all these specialties, all these things, when really it's all the similar type of thing. It's either the body's trying to detox or the body's in a nutritional deficiency state, and it just depends on the location, right? That's it.
Yeah. So
they can all be all, yeah, I'm special, you know, in their little white coat and have all these, you know, it's like make work projects. It's like all of science is a make work project to keep the funding, to keep the money, to keep the control. It just bleh to me. So if we understand that if we keep ourselves clean by regular detox, by encouraging sweating, right, moving the blood, keeping our inflammation under control by not putting sugar and poison and junk and smoking and drinking and partying and using this as a trash compactor, then you don't have to go through all these seasonal detoxes that are like colds and flus. That's what they are.
Yeah.
You can take an enema, do some drainage, use some homeopathics for that, up your vitamin C, up your, I was going to say before, when you said how they bastardize certain things by saying something bad about it. MMS is another great one, that, or chlorine dioxide solution, that they've attacked.
Is that magnesium and something?
No, it's a solution. It's chlorine dioxide solution, and it was first rediscovered or identified by Jim Humble when he realized that, because he was using it as water purification tablets when he was traveling through Africa, and he gave it to a friend who had malaria, and it cured his malaria, and he's like, what?
Wow.
I gotta know more about this, right? And then he continued to study it, and he's, sort of the forefather of it in modern times. It said we need to use this for other conditions, and it's fascinating because as we were talking about the germ theory and with the bacteria break down the tissue, and obviously if you don't have enough nutrition and the body's breaking down all this tissue, you're going to have a lot of these organisms still hanging around, and the organisms make their own wastes. So you can have problems with infection in that regard, right? If you can't get rid of your waste, that's going to be a problem. That's what the traditional infection is. Your body is unable to remove that. And then the bacteria themselves become a problem by virtue of their living conditions.
Yeah.
Right? Just like anybody, if their trash can't be removed. And so with the MMS, what I learned, because everything has to be fitting into the germ theory now. You see what I mean by when you have the correct truth window that you're looking through, then you can see what doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
Right? It's easier then to go, well, that can't be true. So then what would it be? And it opens up your mind into theorizing now other ideas.
Yeah.
Like contagion ideas. I'm still theorizing lots of different situations in which we could have true contagion, not based on you're catching something like a bacteria, and I'm still working on that, and that's probably going to be another whole book or something. Who knows what that's going to be like, but that's one of the things I'm, it's like in life, you're faced with a certain question, and so this is one of the questions I'm looking at right now, right?
Well, because one of the things that both with Zika and with polio, it seemed like the actual culprit was an environmental toxin, right? And so that could be something that seems like contagion, but is not necessarily.
Yeah, and also it can be they were vaccinated, so they're already poisoned. That was the Spanish flu that was a vaccine-caused illness, right? So it wasn't a flu. It killed all the people because the people who gave the vaccines to all the soldiers, they murdered them. They died from vaccines, and they covered that up, right? And it was a heavily they were testing all kinds of crazy stuff, and they were multiple vaccines for all kinds of things at that time. So that's what killed everybody. And polio was DDT.
Yeah.
And also could be Paris green as well. So there are a few different toxins that could give similar neurological damage, neurological situation. Polio never went away. People say, see, we cured polio.
Yeah.
It actually never went away. They formally renamed it.
How convenient.
Yeah. Oh, see, polio's gone because we got rid of the name.
Yeah. Ooh.
We're going to call it Guillain-Barré syndrome or multiple myellosis or blah, 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 or whatever fancy schmancy important name we have that we now have specialists for and all this stuff, right? Names. Because that's how they dilute it. They hid it. Right? It's still happening. That's what MS is. What do you think MS is? It's basically polio. So, I mean, it's insane. I look at this world and I go, well, to me, this is it's very logical. And everything that I've come to, I've gone into my fantasy world and I've played in that realm and I've come out of it now because that's how we learn. We learn through mistakes. We learn through what's not true. And I already did that. And that was a lot of my youth, right? Playing with those ideas. And I think it's also part in how it shaped my mind because now it has to be logical and there has to be some factual evidence with it. And people say, well, what do you believe? I'm like, there's no beliefs.
Yeah.
I don't do a belief. If it's a belief, then I'm not there yet. So if I'm on a belief level of something and I just haven't studied it enough yet, or I haven't meditated enough on it yet, or I haven't elucidated the piece of the puzzle yet.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to really openly talk about that until it's now a fact.
Yes.
And that's,
until you know it because it's internally true and you've understood it.
just, I want to know truth, right? And it's not even that it's just my truth versus someone. This is fundamental truth.
The
When you
truth.
throw something up in the air, it comes down. That's a fundamental truth. And that's how I look at these things now. So for me, germ theory is a fundamental truth. And I understand how the intimacy of the cells are wanting to are vital, are alive. Like, we're alive, we're teeming. All it takes is go online and go find living cells under a microscope and go watch them move around. And you'll see your white blood cells act like they're alive. All of the things in your body act like they're living. They go towards stimulus and away from stimulus. They engulf things, they eat, they poop. They all have these mechanisms,
Yeah.
right? Whether you want to go and say it has a consciousness or all that, that's irrelevant. The fact is they move like they're alive.
Yeah.
And they have activities like they're alive, right? And so you treat them like living things, and that's what you are. You are a mixture of that. I remember my daughter, when she was 6 months old, and I was gardening outside. She was a little fat, little chubby bald baby, cutest thing ever. And I turn around and I witness her going into this little bit of a trance, and she is grabbing handfuls of dirt and eating. She's just going for it. And at first I'm like, oh, as a parent, you're like, you don't want them to do something stupid.
Right.
But I stopped myself because I noticed that she was in a place.
Yeah.
It wasn't just she was being goofy. I watched her as she spit out a rock. So she knew not to swallow a rock, and she knew how to eat it.
Wow.
And that I know. And in that moment, I knew it was a fundamental reflex
Wow.
of a child. That's like a birthright for them to eat and taste the earth in which their food is grown.
Wow.
Right? And it was healthy soil. It was soil that we were growing our food on. But that was when I realized that now her body has tasted the environment, right?
Yeah.
Her body knows what's going on and what's expected of her as she's preparing to now start to eat food at that age.
Wow.
And to me, it was brilliant. To me, it's like the least amount of messing around with it we can, the better off we are. I mean, she's never been to any health practitioner on any level.
That's awesome.
And what for? You don't mess around. You use homeopathics when they have a fever to help the fever. You never suppress a fever. You don't give them Tylenol and drug them. If you don't mess around with their perfect system, it will work perfectly. And you feed them the proper foods, and you try to prevent them from getting all kinds of out there in the world. Like I remember eating at a restaurant, which is harder and harder to do these days because they're all full of whatever.
Yeah.
And a person walks by and says, "Oh, here, little girl," and hands her candy. It's like,
What?
I don't give my child this, and I know
That's
you're
a
trying
weird thing to do to a random stranger's kid. Like, what?
I was surprised at what people do when they see a baby. You know what? I think it actually brings out a tribal nature, a community nature in them. I don't see it as malicious. I see it as an untouched part of who we are.
Yeah.
Because we really should raise a baby in a tribe.
True.
Where the baby, basically, there was a rule, and I can't remember which. It was Native American culture, which culture it was. And I did this with my daughter. The rule is for the first 3 months, that baby does not get put down other than to be grounded on the ground, to lay, to do, grounding work.
Yeah.
To sleep, obviously, which you're co-sleeping anyway. But that baby gets carried all the time. So I kangaroo carried her for what they call the 4th trimester. For the next 3 months, I carried her on me all the time. When I did dishes, when I vacuumed, she was on me.
I love that.
Yeah, because you just carried that baby for 9 months, and now you're like, get away, go somewhere. I'm busy, No, you carry them, and then it also helps to get your body back in shape.
Yeah.
Well, so that was that. Just learning just following nature's dictates as much as you can, then you don't get into so much trouble. But the second you think there's some mistake, like, oh, the tonsils are a mistake, oh, that pesky gallbladder, these vestigial organs,
just cut them out. You're like, what? Why? You're gonna cut something out of someone's body? That's crazy.
I tell you the troubles they have later. I mean, maybe they have temporary relief from their condition, which was never actually dealt with.
Yeah.
Right? We're not ever going to deal with, well, why did that actually happen? I mean, Hulda Clark said, if that person has gallstones, then they have stones in their liver as well. So, just removing the organ isn't dealing with the fact that they're creating stones.
Yeah.
So I've saved many a gallbladder, I'll tell you. I should have like some sort of like picture of a gallbladder. Like every time I save one, I get like
it's like your little life bars.
yeah.
What do you do? What do you suggest for people who have stones? Because I think that's a pretty common occurrence, right?
Yeah, and it's typically I see a lot is it's a dehydration. Honestly, they just don't water. They don't drink enough water, and the bile, it's like thick, right? And then it becomes like stone-like or ball-like, and it's not flowing anymore, and then it can cause inflammation inside the gallbladder. And then they have the colic, where one of the stones will get pushed out through the neck of the gallbladder, excuse me, and it'll get stuck, and that's very, very painful, and that's an emergency as well. So generally, there's lots of different flushes. I typically go more gentle. I know there's a specific flush where you drink olive oil and that kind of thing, and it does work. It does. I have done it, and I know many others who have, and you just have to do it correctly, and there's certain rules around it, that's all. But castor oil packs and drinking water is pretty much simpler way as far as I'm concerned, because I don't like drinking that Epsom salt water at the end. I just can't get it down.
Yeah.
I mean, I can drink DMSO, I can take in MSM sulfur, I can do all kinds of stuff with that. Everyone has their limits.
Yes.
But that, taking care of your digestive tract in general, making sure you're not eating, huge fatty meals it's overwhelming the amount of bile that you're making, because that's what's digesting your fats. And taking some digestive enzymes and things to take the weight off the liver and give the liver a break, doing some intermittent fasting, or just some general fasting. But really, when I talk to the people who have this situation, they're hardly eating and drinking properly. It's all just like diabetes, just like, the majority of the diseases we see in the modern era, it's all what they're putting in or not putting in their mouths, right?
Yeah, it's all nutrition.
Yeah.
Which is the last thing that any doctor wants to talk about.
Well, they can't talk about it. They don't have any training in it. So how are
True. That's insanity. There's no training for that. Like, that seems like the basis.
Yeah, 1 hour. That's it.
Wow. And I heard too that with vaccines, it's something about the same. It's like 1 day or something, like that vaccines are covered or talked about. And then now all of a sudden doctors are experts on vaccines. And it's like, how could you be?
Well, Dr. Nancy Banks, she has a really good quote about that, where she says, basically we're not taught about what vaccines are. We're told how to administer them. That's all the teaching that's being given. It's not about questioning
Teaching.
The bit of history is Jenner, blah, 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 Pasteur, blah, 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 blah. They're so awesome, blah, 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 blah. Vaccines save lives, blah, 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 blah. And here's how you give them to your patients.
And here's how you convince your patients who are resistant to do it anyway.
Right. Those bad parents that dare question you because you are a god in a white coat and no one is smarter than you. And if anyone else was smarter than you, then there'd be a whole other echelon of schooling and for those special people. But you're the smartest that exist, and that's why you're in med school. And so you're the best of all the rest.
Yeah. That
means you get to say anything you want and do anything you want because you're awesome.
You know everything.
Yeah. And that's really, that's first year, that's what they drill. And even a little bit in naturopathic college, just a little. It's there.
And that's the cult like you're talking about. We have the cult of the white coat, and we have and you came up against that cult and saw the, pushing you out because you didn't fit into the cult. And I see the same thing in education. I was a teacher for 14 years, depending on how you count the years. And I saw the same thing there. It's a cult. It's a cult there too. If you're not towing the line and, repeating the lies, then everyone hates you and you're pushed out. And even like you were saying, like you went into naturopathy, and even there you were like the radical. And like I went into alternative education eventually, and even there I was hated. And so, these cults it's almost like every single guild or profession or sort of, career path you can go into is its own cult to like uphold its own gatekeeping and its own homogeny of thought. Yeah.
Yeah, naturopathic, it's a special interest group, right?
Yeah.
And like school teachers, special interest group, they just want their thing. They've dedicated their lives and their belief systems into that, box. And if it's questioned or if it wants to change, then it's very difficult. And I think that's one of the weaknesses of humans is that we become rigid, especially as we age, we become more rigid, not just physically rigid. I mean, like mentally rigid.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, having this issue where we're trying to continually improve on something and then to have a resistance that is, instead of having an open dialogue. So how about instead when you're met with something new, instead of going, hey, you're an idiot.
Kill it.
Kill it because I'm uncomfortable personally. How about we spiritually mature and get past that and go, hey, well, I'd like to hear what you have to say because you're an inventor. That's the people like us. That's what we're actually doing. We're inventors. We're creating on the fringe and we're moving things forward. And it's not like I was watching this show about the Victorian era and it was very highly competitive and everything was very fresh and new. And when you were building bridges and building trains and building boats and building, these incredible ideas that hadn't been done before, it was applauded because you were, yes, competing against somebody else who was trying to do it. So there was a little bit of that, but it wasn't like, oh, you're going to try that. That's stupid. No, they were like, okay, yeah, do it, go for it. And it was a very free time to play around with that. And also they weren't so drugged and dumbed down that they had a huge amount of skill set and they were very athletic and they weren't obese. And, even though a lot of them still smoked, they were still slim set and, lived well. And I always like to study history. And I think we've forgotten to look back at where we've come from and I mean through proper filters and knowing that there's going to be propaganda on a lot of the history. So you have to take the stories you're told and go, okay, yeah. Nice. That's fine. I know that's the story what's popular. So whatever popular story is, that's what they want you to believe. Then you go to the least popular and read there. And that's probably closer to the truth than what the popular opinion is.
And try to find source documents as much as you can or primary documents as much as you can too, and make your own opinion and from, whatever you can gather together, because you're intelligent enough to do that. You can draw your own conclusions. Sometimes you don't always have to take someone else's word for it, especially when they've synthesized it into this, analysis and presented it to you. It's like, well, that's now gone through a filter or two, so maybe it's a great one, but maybe it's not. Maybe yours is even better.
Well, there's phases of this growth as well. And and unfortunately, you can't really see where someone is on the lower side. So when you've gone through a phase and you're on the top and you're looking the other way, you can see when someone's going through it. But you can't really see the phase you're in because you can't compare it to that. You can only always see the phase below you. And so you process something on one echelon or layer, and then you move to the next layer and then the next layer, and then you reflect back and go, oh, wow, I believe that too. Or just like this person I'm talking to right now, I can see exactly where they're at by the way they're speaking or what they're talking about and the echelon they're currently working through, right? Now, the problem is some people get stuck in one of them. The idea, and this was always my idea and purpose in life, is to move always ever forward, continue the growth. Like you don't just stop like, well, figured it all out.
Yeah. Never arrive, just always keep going.
And what's interesting is the more I know, the more it actually is growing. Like it's actually instead of narrowing, it's actually going the other way. And it's like, okay.
Yes. And that's that thing why the smartest people tend to, and the most accomplished, the most experienced people tend to feel like they're not very accomplished or experienced. And that's why it's an effect of that is now you're more capable of seeing like all of the entirety of the things that you've never even touched yet.
It's very humbling, and it's important to stay humble. And I think it's also important to already assume, as much as we can talk about what we think we know, at the end of the day, go in humble and say, I know nothing. I'm an empty vessel. Fill me up again the next day. I filled up today, and I will sleep and I will let it go. And then tomorrow I'll be filled up again. And I'm never full. I've never arrived. I'm never, well, I know, you're not, because that's arrogance. And if you're and that's why the medical profession, the teacher profession, it's run by arrogance.
Yes.
Rather than those who are malleable and who are mutable, where they're able to say, I can be faced with new information and actually have some room inside of me to contemplate that. And I don't think most people even take time to contemplate anymore.
No, yeah, that's a great point. No one does it. And even if you take a minute to just sit and contemplate, like sometimes people are calling that meditation. And it is a meditation. It is a meditation, but it's not like the deeper level meditation that you might really want people to get to. But it's interesting that we really don't think, and that what you're describing is, intentionally created as this attitude that people should have, almost this arrogance and this, when you look at who is in a room being treated as the expert or the authority, it's like the person who's actually in many ways the stupidest, because they're the most sure. They're acting so confident about it. And it's like, so everyone's responding to that. And it's like, this is the worst person we could be following, actually. They just act very, capable.
Well, I mean, that's really where we have to get into your own work, where you have to do your own reflection work. And I do see it as different stages. Like I see meditation, how I view meditation is sitting in my mind and seeing what arises in my mind. And then I can acknowledge it. And usually if I have a lot of thoughts that I haven't been able to process in the day, then I'll process them at that point in time. That's why I like to do my meditation at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I'll process all the floss, all the jetsam and flotsam of what the day is. And I'll even maybe write some of that down, because I might remember something, or say, I put that on the grocery list, or all of those things will come to the surface first, and that gets taken out. And then it's really about listening to your higher self. So listening to your God self. And once all that clutters away, then you can hear a few things, right? Yeah. And also it's going to shift your frequency and so forth. So that's important for that. But then the contemplation part of it is a separate entity, because contemplation is an actual active thinking part. When you're meditating, you're really not going after thinking.
I see what you're,
right? When you're contemplating, you're on purpose thinking.
You're thinking about this thing on purpose. Yeah.
Right. And it might even mean I'm going to go take my camera and take pictures of something I'm contemplating, because I'm going to do my own scientific experiments to prove with evidence of what I'm contemplating. Right?
Or you may contemplate just like the texture of a thing. Like it doesn't even necessarily have to be some sort of like profound idea or whatever. It's like you can literally contemplate anything.
Yeah, and that's as individual as every individual, right? I mean, if it's an artist's mind, they're going to contemplate exactly what you said. If it's someone who's a scientific mind, then they're going to contemplate it in another way. And then if it's somebody who's contemplating a mathematical equation, then that's something else, right? It's just, I'll sit and contemplate a formula that I want to make. Okay, I've been sitting on this really potent silica from my friend from Iceland sent me from this beautiful lake there that has this sacred silica, and he sent me a bunch of it so I can put it into a face cream. Cool. And I want to put it with DMSO, and I'm still studying the chemistry of it, and I haven't had enough time to really contemplate the purpose of that particular cream that I would make, right? And that would be something that I would be sitting and contemplating. And
so you could contemplate that thing and then also meditate afterwards and find like even better.
Yes, exactly. Yes, they definitely work in a tandem manner. Absolutely. And then there's active meditation where you're moving your body, so the yang, where you're in movement, in motion, and then there's the yin, where you're in silence and non-motion.
Yeah.
Right? And there's all of those things, but I think when we're trying to find our purpose, I think when people are depressed, that's part of it. And the other part I've noticed is that when you know too much, that can also lead to depression. I know that I get into states like that sometimes because I get all these bad stories all the time, right? Because
You have like secondary trauma.
right. And being empathic and trying to hold boundaries while not absorbing somebody else's experience, which is, by the way, another part I'm contemplating about contagion, where if somebody starts to come to you and talks about their disease, how many times have I walked away with those symptoms in my body?
Yeah.
Many
Even
times.
as simply as now you're saying that, like when you anthropologically, I guess, when you go and speak to someone, you start mimicking their facial movements and their body movements and their tone and their pace and whatever. And we've probably done it to each other by this point in this conversation. And so that is kind of something you naturally are exchanging. So that's an interesting idea.
Well, we discounted the unseen in some strange way, which is so ironic, being that we are talking on machines that completely run on the unseen, and internet that's completely unseen, and televisions and radio and all of these frequencies, and yet we've forgotten that we're that too.
Yeah.
Which I find just absurd.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've forgotten that we're electrical beings as well. And so are all things. And then we start to blast frequencies and we wonder why birds fall out of the sky, or the bees are dying, or everyone is dropping dead, on the streets when they turn on the 5G and stuff. Like, it's so surprising. That's not very, shouldn't be very surprising.
Yeah.
We already know a lot of this, and it's also evidenced. And when you're around someone, you begin to resonate with them, especially if you have sympathy, empathy, in compassion, right? Then as they're relaying your story, you can imagine being in their place. And that means you'll start to resonate with them. And depending how good your imagination is, and mine happens to be super great, I can then walk away with those sensations in my body. And it took me a long time to figure out how to cleanse those and purge those, so I just didn't walk around in so much pain all the time with other people's stuff. And while sometimes I took it completely and they felt great. And at the beginning, when I was learning to do this healing arts, I thought that's how you do it, actually. Like,
take it into yourself and just carry it away.
I'll deal with it. Like, just get here, like, oh, you have that burden here, I'll take it, and then I'll work on it because I know how to do it better. And then I realized my error, because as I'm more seasoned now, sometimes you don't, well, first of all, you don't take that away from them. That's their sacred experience, even though it's you call it negative or whatever.
Good point.
But you don't do that, you'll make terrible karma, for one. Terrible. But two, why would you take away the gift that they're going to get when they transcend that?
Good point.
They're going to transcend that themselves, right? It's like helicopter parenting. You can't just do everything for your child. At some point, they're going to have to fall and scrape their knee, and you got to let them do that so they have that experience, and then they can take control of preventing it later. You're not going to be able to keep doing that for them.
Yeah.
And it's like that with
point.
healing. It took me a while. Carolyn Mace, M-Y-S-S, her last name, Carolyn Mace. I remember I had a DVD set back when we had those DVDs.
Some people listening are like, huh?
And some people like, what? Yeah. So I had a set, and I still have it actually, and it's called Advice for the Developing Healer. And that was really another one of those shapely moments in my life where she was basically giving me one 1-2 smack of like, don't do this stuff. Right? Don't think you're not a savior. You're not coming in to save them from their own experiences. You're there to offer them guidance on the path of their experience. And then they can make the choice in that, right? Whether they do it or not. And I have many people, they won't do it. They won't do the healing. They like the suffering more than the healing. And I can't stop it. And that can weigh on a person as well, where and then if your ego is in the forefront, then you take it personally.
Yeah.
Well, I failed because I didn't heal that person, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole process of healing, like when you're a healer and you learn all that. And then what's interesting is after you go through all of that, you don't even really attract people at all that are unwilling, really. So all of the individuals who seek me out at this point, they're so ready. they are ripe for the picking. And I just go boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. And they go, okay. And then they're done. They heal it.
And that makes perfect sense to me as far as like all of life goes, is that what you needed at some point was to learn that from them, that this is like something that is, you can't take into yourself and that you have to let them do, and that they might not do it, and then that's not your fault. And so you were attracting each other, and now you're at the point where you don't need that lesson anymore. So now you're only attracting the people who really, need what you have as well.
And that's resonance, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a resonance right there. So, I mean, there's electrical discussion again, where people talk about law of attraction stuff, and I don't like using specific terminology because I don't want it to be a catchphrase, and I want it to be understood.
Yeah, and you don't want people to get hung up on any specific method that may have boxed things in, because I think there's kind of a million ways to approach a thing too.
Exactly, and you can have all kinds of language to describe a similar experience.
Yes.
And what I've learned to do is try to explain the fundamental or the foundation of the experience, that then someone could then attach what makes sense for them in their languaging.
Yeah.
Right, and take it with them. And so that whole idea of progressing through, your disease state, or your understanding part of your component of your ego, or with German New Medicine, which I've been studying more and more, which is part of a conflict shock in your mind that's then translating into physical disease, right? That's very profound. And again, we're talking about things that are subtle. We're talking about things that are electrical. We're talking about things that are not what people think the physical reality is.
Yeah.
Which, again, even the physical reality isn't the physical reality. If you keep looking down far enough, all you get is empty space.
Yeah.
Right? It's just vibrating stuff. It's just vibrating slower than the other aspects you're not able to see. And that's when people need to do lots of mushrooms.
Yeah. So you're describing this and I'm like, this is like acid. This is what you get from acid.
Yeah. I think everyone in their life should have at least one psychedelic experience, either using LSD or ayahuasca or mushrooms or whatever. There's lots of ways to get you there.
Yes. Safely, in a protected way. Yeah.
I've been talking about it lately, and people saying, one day I took like 70 caps of mushrooms, or I took like all this high level stuff. I'm like, why though?
Right, yeah.
Because you don't need all that to get a really important experience. It just seems to be abuse, and you don't need to abuse something to have an experience.
Yeah.
Right? Like even nicotine is a sacred plant. Right?
Yeah.
You can use it in a sacred circle and have a really good communication with people once or twice, and that's an experience, right? Rather than as addiction.
Yeah. Well, and you are a proponent of microdosing as well, which we were talking also, and I had also tried that last spring, and I'm a big fan too. What do you suggest if people are thinking about that, or what do you like about it?
Well, there's different laws in different areas, but what's been the trend now is of legalization of microdoses, so that because it's such a small amount, it's not going to actually put you in a high.
Yeah.
Put you in a psychedelic experience and or conflict with other medications or anything dangerous. So that's why it's going through a lot of legalization in a lot of areas. I know there's 3 of your states already that have legalized it.
I think I think Denver is one of them.
Good. I think you're good.
Yeah.
It was Colorado or something. I thought I read that. And then California. And then there was one more. I can't remember.
I'm kind of worried about it because it's just like the legalization of marijuana. I think, well, first of all, I know there's something between decriminalization and legalization, and that the terminology matters, and that a lot of people are upset that it's legalized and not decriminalized. So if you understand that, that'd be interesting to hear more about. And then I also worry about the sort of, big pharma and big agriculture taking over these sacred medicines that who knows what they'll do to it, and obviously wouldn't have the best vibration in it no matter how you look at it, even if they keep it like organic or whatever.
Well, they've done that with cannabis already, but take cannabis as the example, because that is a perfect example of a criminalized drug that's decriminalized and still And because it's actually in Canada where there's still tons of criminal law around it, so it's not all free. There's lots of wound up laws, and it's quite a mess. And I suspect it'll be similar for all of these other things that are going to be allowed in with their limits, right? Which I'm fine with really, because what's happened is individuals have just done civil disobedience on some of these things and said, I don't care. I'm going to break the law because it needs to be broken. And that's actually what's opened up the whole microdosing thing, is Paul Stamets, like, basically breaking law and just.
I love that man. I'd love to talk to him. He's amazing.
He's just, because sometimes that civil disobedience is warranted, like just what we were talking about, because they're stuck in their box, right? And how are you going to get out if you don't do something a little more intense? And that means you're going to have to go against the grain, and that requires bravery to do things like that. And with marijuana, or whatever terminology you want to use, CBD, THC, cannabis, or all these, what's it called? Green, and along comes Mary. No, like, there's how many loosh, or there's so many names for pot.
Yeah.
Because. And why? Because it was illegal, so you had to come up with all your special names for things, right? And people are already telling me they had their special name for mushrooms too. So there's all this kind of culture around it, which is fascinating as well. That's a PhD. Somebody's going to do a PhD on that, I bet.
Yes, if they haven't yet.
They haven't already. But if you just see how the different countries respond to certain things in the way they're legalizing it, I think it'll give you it gives us a framework of how they're going to go forward with it. And yes, there's going to be government ruining it. That's what
they do.
Ruins things. So yes, they're going to, they have their own, which is going to suck. But people have already found ways. This is stuff that grows in nature.
True.
Other than, LSD, it's a different story. But for these items, you can grow it in your backyard. So you can get your own as you need to, and I think that's what's happening more and more. And because the courts don't want to get tied up with a lot of these they're not serious crimes, and they don't like to have their courts filled up with these things, so they let a lot of the stuff go. I mean, just what's happening in certain places, like in San Francisco, right? You have so much homelessness and so many people living in tent cities and so forth. They're breaking a lot of technical laws. But they can't process the people, and they can't deal with it, so they just let it slide, right? And it's almost like, now that's a negative version of what I'm saying, but this is, with this type of legalization, it's sort of like a bit of a free pass. Just have to be careful that you're doing, you know what it is to me, how I see it? It's a test. Are we mature enough as a human group to handle this?
Yeah.
Can we be adult about it? Can we be responsible? Or are we just going to act like a bunch of idiots? Because the only reason the mommy and daddy of government have come in and put us in wards, put us in we're babies, we're children, is because we act like it. So are we going to act like adults? Then we can slough off some of these things. But if we're going to be immature and we're going to do self-harm and be imbeciles and not clean up after our mess and
not take care of ourselves,
responsibilities,
right.
Then we deserve it. We get what we ask for, right? And when I see these things coming up, I get excited, because I'm like, okay, they're testing to see if we
get to try it.
Adults about this, right? And it's happening anyway. There's a lot of scientific experiments going on with these things right now that is opened up. So they've released, I think they've taken it out of a class 1, put it into class 3, so that researchers are allowed to experiment on it. And that's open door now to legalization, because once you have psychologists, psychiatrists, all of these groups vying for it, knowing that it treats post-traumatic stress disorder, sleep disorders, all kinds of mental health aberrations, depression, anxiety, the list goes on, autism, ADD, Down syndrome, helps with all of these conditions, pain, heart disease. I mean, it's a lot of things. And it's an era where it's happening, and this is what gives me hope as well. We still have this agenda, this New World Order, whatever you want to call it, pushing through the UN, pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing with their hoaxes and their games. And at the same time, we're having something like mushrooms being legalized.
True.
You know, coming down from class 1, criminal groups and laws and things. It's like, okay, all right, now we're talking. So that's where we need to be. So I do have.
That is hopeful.
It is hopeful. So I am selling a psilocybin blend, so it's a stacks blend. It has lion's mane mushroom with it. So it's Paul Stamets stacks formula with a little couple other things.
Cool.
Reishi mushroom, chaga mushroom, niacin, lion's mane, and the psilocybins.
Oh, that's awesome.
On my website.
So, and then is that something that people, because I know when you're kind of microdosing just psychedelics, then you don't want to necessarily do it all of the time. You kind of like do it for a few days or a week or whatever, then take some time off. And then is this similar to that?
Oh yes, and really what your goal is, you can get off opioids. It's I think also why they're really open to it is that the opioid crisis is
crazy.
It's crazy. It's so out of control. Now you talk when I was talking about the San Francisco street situation. That's an opioid crisis. That's what that is, right? That's why they're homeless, because they're addicted. That's how they get addicted.
Yeah.
And they lose everything, and then off they go.
Right.
And how do you get control of this now? And the mushrooms, the microdosing, will get them off of it and get them out of the addicted brain, because it actually rehabilitates brain tissue.
Which is amazing.
Yes, and it takes your mind out of a certain component where, when you think negative thoughts over and over again,
you're like building that pathway over and over, and
you're in that, right? Like post-traumatic stress disorder, they'll be over and over and over with the same thoughts. So a trauma, they're repeating it and they're trying to close the loop and they're trying to heal it, right?
Yeah.
It's in their head. Well, the mushrooms takes your neurons away from that level of the mind and into other connections between the hippocampus and the frontal lobe, and actually will help you get away from repeating thoughts and into actual calm thought, and assist with memory. So say you were worried about something in the past that you couldn't remember, like, did I do the buckle up or not? Did I, something happened and you're picking on something. The memory and the creativity that it gives can give you a new solution as well in your mind, where you go, oh, that's ridiculous, because I totally remember I did do it up properly and I did double check it. I remember now. I remember I was in a good mood, or whatever the detail is. Then it helps your mind to come back to that appropriately, and then close that loop of trauma or depression or anxiety or whatever the thing is that you're looping. And that's profound. And so you only do it. There's different dosing methods. You can do 1 day on and 1 day off. You usually don't go further than 3 months. 3 months is like a treatment window. And then you can do 4 days on and 1 day off. That's where I like that. I like the 4-in-1. That's what I've been doing. There's everything you can imagine of rotation. Really, you're just not trying to have, you don't want to build up tolerance. So that's also why you take 24 to 48 hour breaks in between whatever your cycles are. You could do, one of them is 7 days on, 1 day off. So that's a more intensive protocol where you really got something serious going on and you want to get ahead of it because maybe you're having suicidal ideation or something very traumatic that you really can't stand it anymore. Then I would say to do that a little bit more. But really, you should, if you've got depression or something quite serious, obviously you should be working with a practitioner that knows what medications you might be taking and be helping you to get off of those medications, and working with someone who can help you, either a counselor or a psychologist, or someone who, a holistic psychologist ideally, who can listen to you, and you have a place that's safe, that you can speak with someone that's going to ground you and help you through experiences, because things are always going to be potentially unpredictable for a certain percentage of people, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, are we adult enough to be wise to our own selves to know what's right or not? But even so, I know there are people who are pretty unhinged that I would still suggest they work with it, because it's so low of a dose that they'll get enough of a pick-me-up in their cognition that they may just get, where have I been? hello me, you know, what have I been doing? Like if they haven't bathed for a while or something, you know, it might just be a self-care that they can start to do again. And
Yeah.
it's pretty exciting. I think it's going to be good. Yes, it is bothersome that it's not technically decriminalized yet, and that you can actually go and pick it if it's fresh, and you can carry it and take it, but not if it's dried. It's just strange.
That is weird. I remember when I was young, I was probably, I don't know, I think I was like 13 actually. And I was driving with somebody and they had a giant grocery bag full of mushrooms that we had picked in the field and dried over time and whatever. And it was like a massive amounts. And we actually got pulled over by the cops. And so I'm guessing at this time it wasn't illegal because the cop was like, "What's in the bag?" And we were like, "Mushrooms." And they was like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be driving if you're taking those." And we're like, "Oh, we haven't yet." And he's like, "Okay, well, just get home safe." And we like drove away. And I'm like, that really happened? Like how? And so I guess there wasn't a law against it at the time. I don't know.
No, if it's fresh, it's okay. If it's fresh,
well, it had been dried, but maybe he just didn't know that part. Yeah.
Or he was like, whatever.
Or he was like, cool. Yeah. It's pretty weird. So I just assumed, I was like, oh, they're not illegal, you know? And then people are like, yeah, they are. I'm like, oh, okay. So in my mind, it was legal enough that it didn't matter or something.
Yeah, there's things where it's hard. We're in a lot of change right now, so it's interesting times definitely to be around, and we'll see where it heads. But you know, as a healer, my duty is to continually work with nature and find the thing that works, and then make sure that individual can get it and use it safely. And if you're in integrity and you're responsible, which means that you're not just pushing something on somebody to make a buck, you're not just throwing away any kind of feedback, or you know, you're trying to be very diligent in what you're doing, right? And I think that's what my understanding when I studied the history of law is that the laws came in because people weren't being responsible, and that's where, you know, regulators said, well, we have to stop this because the people the bad eggs were taking advantage of things, and that's where the law was being built around those experiences, right?
Which kind of goes back to that idea that we agree at some level to all of this, right? And like you were saying, like if we're kind of leveling up to the next level of adulthood or responsibility, or however you want to think of that, then that's how it kind of will start to fall away as well.
Right. Because do we need the reflection of that experience? Do we need to be scolded? Are we still in that stage where we need to be shamed and scolded and feel like a little school kid did something bad? And because if you need that, then you'll get drawn into the court system, right?
Right.
If you don't need that anymore, then you're obviously going to work in a level of integrity where you're ensuring responsibility, right? And you're ensuring consent and things that are, you know, appropriate, and also you're able to say no to things, and that was hard for me because I always wanted to be likable, I always wanted to have friends, I always wanted to do those things, and so I was very eager always to, as a giver and a helper, I always was very eager to just, if someone said, can I have this from you, I'd say yes before they even finished asking it. Right? And I got taken advantage of a lot for that behavior. And I had to learn the hard way. And in fact, to the other degree where I actually had to close down my borders completely and say no to things that, you know, normally I would help that person move, or normally I would be there for that person or do that thing. But I couldn't. I actually got to such a state of depletion and such a state of disillusionment around relationships that I actually had to go fully the other direction. And my spiritual teacher actually told me about how somebody becomes a master of something, and it's called the pendulum swing. And really, it means that you're going to do the dance of the entire pendulum on whatever that thing is that you're learning. So if you're learning boundaries, you're going to be completely boundaryless, and then you're going to have really super crazy, over tight, like too much boundaries, and then you're going to find this sweet spot, and then you're going to pass through the eye of the needle, as she said, and then that's the mastership of it. Right?
That's the middle path. Yeah.
And that's the 3, right?
Yes.
That's the 3.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right? And But so when I see where I'm at on a pendulum swing for something that I'm experiencing, when you've developed your own, what they call the second attention in meditation, where you have a Cheshire cat head of yourself looking at you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And it's not in a judgment way. It's that you're noticing yourself, right?
You're like outside of yourself.
Right.
Somehow.
And
Yeah.
it's not supposed to be hypercritical, but you do go through those stages of it. But once you get through those stages, then you're actually self-witnessing, and you then can notice where you're at much easier in that, and you can say, oh, it's okay, I don't have to freak out about this experience, because this is just where I am on the pendulum swing, and I have to go through that experience, because now I'm going to take that knowledge and I'm going to go to this level, and then this level, and then you're here, and it's at the most extreme, and then the coming down to the center is a lot easier. The tension starts to come out of it. So then, as soon as you hit the peak, you just can't take it anymore. You're right there. Just know that the relief is coming, and it just...
That's when it breaks.
If you've done the work. Because sometimes those things can literally break you. If you refuse, if you're so headstrong and you actually refuse to look at it as a lesson, and take the material that you're given and work through with your contemplation, your meditation, and so forth. If you don't, then you'll just keep bouncing it back and forth, back and forth. That's why you'll see people, they just never change.
Yes.
They never change, or they never grow, or they never get past a certain place. When I used to practice Tibetan Buddhism, I did it formally for 2 years. Actually, I tasted many religions, not every, there's too many for that, but I did many major religions, not as because I needed what many other people need. I just wanted to understand why people did that, and what was common among all of them. And once I identified the common thread underneath the religions, I could let them all go. And that's all I needed to see.
That's right? That same process of the pendulum swing, right?
Exactly. And I noticed in the Sangha, as they say, of the Tibetan, I practice the Tibetan form of Buddhism. The people in the Sangha, they didn't want to grow past it. They didn't want to contemplate further. So I would ask about the double dorje and why we're doing that and what that actually meant. And I would go very deep into that. And I had a one-on-one relationship with the Tibetan monk, so I could actually go in the house and ask and have conversations with him and ask these things. And there were individuals, they just wanted to be around and serve him. They didn't want to know what I wanted to know, right? And that's not wrong. It's just that's where they were at and what they wanted in life. And that's not for me to judge. Yeah. And for me, that wasn't. And I knew I was going to grow past that, right? And that's just and that's their lifetime, and this is my lifetime, and that's that. And you can't even compare it. But if they wanted to go to the next space, then they would delve into that, right? They would go to that questioning, that level of questioning. So it's fascinating, but that helped me so much. There's one of my YouTube videos, I think it's something about the spiritual ego. It's one of my really older ones. And if you go, so you have to go to Yummy Mummy, Emporium, and Apothecary on YouTube. And I'm going to go to DTube and Brighton and all these other ones eventually too. But that, when I talk about some of these lessons that I learned about the ego when I was with my spiritual teacher and trying to figure that out, like, why does my mind do this, or what's my behavior around that? And the hard part is, if you don't continually do it, you'll fall back into ego states pretty easily, and it sort of sucks. Yeah. So I always thought, I did it. Yay, I'm done.
It's that same thing. You never want to arrive.
You never want to arrive, and the second you think you do, you're in an error.
Yeah. and something will pop up to show you.
Oh yeah, like having a baby, that'll pop up.
Yeah.
That pops up. And then that'll show you. That's the next level. And that's the hardest thing, is you think you've gotten somewhere, and actually you just unlock the next level.
Yeah.
It's harder. You're like, oh, so my reward is more work.
More work.
Okay, awesome. Wow. Because somehow you think you're owed a reward.
Yeah.
For all that hard work. Because we're trained from a kid that if you do work, you get a candy or something, right?
Yes.
You get a gold
which
star.
which you do, but the star is the next level. Like that is the achievement. That is your reward. But it is funny because there is no stop and no rest.
No.
I mean, there's rest. I was just reflecting. Like I feel like I'm in this period of time where I'm in sort of like a pause, or a retreat or whatever. Like, but it's not negative. It's not like a depression. It's not like a hibernation. But it's just very interesting compared to the rest of my life, and sort of like hermiting and that is nice. And I guess it is in a way its own kind of reward for something, or it's a step on the path at least. It's
Well, you can see it as a reward or a punishment depending on where your mind's at.
true.
A spiritual teacher would say that's the unplugged state. So when you go on a break, you get unplugged.
Yeah.
So and then you get plugged back in for the next layer. So you unplug, plug back in, that kind of thing. So
I like unplugged. It's the first time for me. I like it.
yeah, and it's a fine state, and it's a state that helps you again to go into more contemplation or just general rest, really just rest and recovery.
Yeah.
Now the interesting thing is I've put myself in such a position that I'm in an unplugged state now as well. And I can't. I'm like traversing two places, which is, I guess, because of the level I'm on, I get to do that, where I'm plugged in and out both of one prong in and one prong
I feel
out.
you. Yeah.
One prong is bent. I don't know, but it's ridiculous. And so it's new territory for me all over again.
I wonder if that's its own kind of middle path pendulum thing as well.
Oh,
like
sure.
duality combined.
And it takes a while to, at the beginning of a fresh pendulum level, it will take a while for you to know what that is.
What's even going on?
You can't identify it if you're at the beginning. If someone's just pulling it up for you,
Yeah.
you're like, whoa, what?
True.
You're not gonna know until you're really getting somewhere where you can like, oh, and then you kind of get knowing from the duality of it. When you're on the first upswing, you're like, this is weird.
Yeah. I don't know what this is.
I don't know where to go, what to do, so I'm going to go have a nap.
Yeah. Oh, this is so much fun. I want to ask you, though, we've talked about a lot of aspects, really, of what we can all do and what sort of our best hope is for ourselves, or our most empowered sort of state. And what would you say if to the people listening, like, what is their greatest power or their greatest asset?
Well, I mean, you mean as a general, because everyone
Yeah.
has a different, there's going to have different superpowers.
In general, like as humans.
The fact that we can inspire each other,
Yeah.
and that when we realize the power that we have and we take it back, then we're it. I mean, we can do whatever. We can change all of this.
Yes.
We can do that, and we have emotions. We have strong emotions, and that's a huge power if it's used properly.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the work that I do on the health front is all about empowering that person in how to take care of their own selves, rather than go and give their power away to a doctor. Do whatever you want to me, or fix me, or like you're a car, taking your car to a mechanic. It's you realizing that you have your own power to heal yourself. And when you realize that, then that's like a launching off point. Say, well, what else am I capable of if this is something that I have within me, right? And it takes them to the next stage of delving into themselves. And so to me, it's that innate soul truth, that of what we are. And the other thing is that every single one of us is unique to this experience, but also as an individual, there's no one else that's like you. I mean, you're not a cookie cutter situation. You're not like, I think a lot of people just think they're random or something, but it's way more sacred than that. Every single individual is, sacred. So, and that's what's hard when I witness all the death and all the destruction and all of the unfairness going on, and the actual, eugenics agenda that's been happening for so long. It's heartbreaking, because these are sacred people just being slaughtered. And it's really hard to keep witnessing that. And also our children being damaged at birth. Willingly, the parents are willingly doing that. And I think once people can awaken enough and take that power back, they won't sacrifice their children to this death cult.
Yeah.
You know, they'll stop doing that. They'll fight back and protect the child, because then we need to have generations of, like my child. You know, if we have generations of people who are not poisoned by this group.
And really have almost, it's like an inability to be poisoned or hoodwinked or, programmed because of how strong you've created this being and how empowered you've, guided them to be.
Yeah. I mean, when I just think back about how, my great grandmother and that all the way down, right? I think about what they knew and what their mothers told them and what they were taught and all of these the lineage. And what I've told my daughter now is it's preposterous when you think about how much more she already knows at the age of 8 that I didn't figure out until I was like 35 or whatever.
Good
right?
point. Yeah.
Or even today, or even like later.
She like came in leveled up.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like we're getting more of a concentrated generation that's going to be like, remember, like something smells stinky. They're like, she's onto it immediately. When somebody's lying, she's like, calls them. I mean, that's why I have to homeschool her.
Yeah.
I mean, I homeschool her because I don't want indoctrination and stuff, but I have to homeschool her because she calls out the teachers.
Yes.
Right? And they don't like that. She's like, oh, well, you did that, and now you're doing this, so you're contradicting yourself.
Those were my favorite students. I was like, this one's thinking.
That's my daughter, so she's always getting in trouble because she'll say to the teacher, "You're not my mom. You can't tell me what to do. All you do is boss us around all day."
And also, you lied about this, and you're inconsistent on that, and you're a hypocrite over here. That's a beautiful thing.
That was short-lived. I mean, I'm a single mom, so I did use it a little bit as an experience, really, for her. But also, I mean, I was focused on building a whole business from basically the ground up. I mean, we were eating out of a food bank when I started this.
Wow.
Right? Because I came up here pregnant. Her dad left after, she was a month old. I had to figure out how to work. I had to figure this whole thing out and pretty quick.
Yeah.
And, you adapt, but at the beginning it was really challenging, and I needed some school. I needed some daycare. I needed something.
Yeah.
To create, and I couldn't have my mind all over the place. So
totally.
That was good. And now she's 8. She's very independent. She, if I put her on a project, she'll do the project herself. And
that's cool.
It's easier for her to be out of school now. The only thing is she's super high energy, and we're in this long winter, and it's around now when it's like, oh gosh, girl needs to just be outside all day and not cooped up in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I like these outdoor classrooms and outdoor preschools and stuff that are cropping up. So
the forest school, they're actually starting a forest school up here, so I'm very excited about that.
That's cool.
Yeah, we're going to get on top of that for
Yay.
Sure. It's just in Canada, I don't know if it's similar to where you are, but we have to drive everywhere to do everything. I mean, it's so much driving. I just want things to just be a little more closer, but like nice. The best of both worlds, where you have a community, you have services, and you have land, and you have not cars everywhere and sounds, and you have quiet time. And so finding that perfect balance is really key. I mean, we've got a new arena that's being built that's humongous, and so finally I'll have an area that I can go to the gym and work out. And my daughter loves to ice skate, and that's going to be a brand new rink, and that's going to be really good for her. And
that's awesome.
And I don't know how long we're going to stay here. And that's the other thing is, like I was saying, I'm in this weird place where I'm not sure what's happening because my business is growing so fast. And so I've had to do some hiring, and, I'm a creator. I'm a healer, right? Medicine woman. And here I have to be an entrepreneur. I have to wear all these hats. I have to be a social media marketer. I have to, like, what is all of this? And it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it, how many what's expected to run a business now, and so that I'm trying to figure out how to hand off tasks properly and
Yeah.
manage them, uh, all of those things. And sometimes I want to go, yeah, I just want to go lay on a beach for 6 months, and
Yeah.
do some yoga. That'd be good.
Definitely.
I can't walk away from
Not when you have a business, no. You really can't.
it's having another baby. It really is. And they go through growth phases and stages. And I see a lot of people who fail at their business because they put too many resources in at the beginning too early, or the incorrect resources. Like I didn't even have a marketing budget until like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough of a budget to purchase actual professional looking signs until last year. Okay. And that's I'm in year 7 of my business.
Wow.
And as I knew that those took money away from the business, and it wasn't important yet.
Yeah.
What was important is to build your rapport, your reputation, and get your word of mouth business going. And that will serve you in the long run and the short run.
Yeah.
And then later you can go and get a little crazy and buy new computers and, buy fancier cards and the doodads, but you don't start there usually, and a lot of people make those mistakes. And then the other mistake is when they do expand, they don't know how to expand. They don't know how, and that's where I'm at. So I have to learn quickly
Yeah.
how to expand this properly, so that I don't just burn out and then give up, because I think that can happen as well. Like people always want success and then they don't know what the heck to do with it when they get it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can self-destruct on success.
Yeah.
You can lose yourself. People always, I see this all the time. I'm on TikTok now. I'm on all these different apps, and I see people, their underlying egoic desires seems to be, I want all the money and all the toys and all the stuff, but I don't want to work.
Yeah.
I just want it to magically be there. And it's an interesting thing because I always had a strong work ethic. I started working for my dad when I was 8, which is my daughter's age now. And I always worked hard and knew how to save money and these things from a very young age. And yet I see this fantasy being played out, just do drop shipping and you'll make loads of money and then you'll be rich and you'll have Ferraris and something like that. And what's interesting is in this economy, you can run with an idea and you can make money. You can. It's possible. That's why I think a lot of people want to come to North America, is because you can do that. If you're smart and you're focused, you can do that. But I follow Gary Vee. He's a very popular creator, and he talks a lot. He inspires a lot of youth into becoming entrepreneurs and not even wasting a lot of money on colleges and so forth, just actually going for it.
Good.
Like with their passion,
Yeah.
living their ideas and not getting indoctrinated into some of the school cults, which I like him for that.
That's
And,
cool.
And he says, people, they get some money and they go blow it on, Ferraris or, on stuff to impress other people. It doesn't make any sense, and those people are going to fail.
Yeah.
But if whatever earnings you have, you invest back into your business, and then it'll keep growing, and that's how it goes. And it actually takes hard work. It's actually doesn't just fall in your lap, and that's the thing, right? So I think I was just on a radio program in the local Canoe FM community radio station. They interviewed me about some of my business stuff and so forth, and I was talking about entrepreneurship, because the thing is, I'm a single mom and I'm a successful entrepreneur, and a lot of people in the community, they don't ask me about it, and that's like, but people always want this,
Yeah.
right? Well, they say, like, or you'll get a lot of moms who are upset that they're stay-at-home moms. They want to do more with their lives, and that's fine, and but they don't know how to go about it. And so I was trying to sort of inspire them to just say, like, follow what makes you happy, what's your passion.
Yeah.
But know that even when you do something that you love and that's your passion, you're going to have days where you don't want to do that, and you still have to.
Yeah.
So you better be okay with that situation, or else don't do it.
That's true.
It'll ruin the thing for you that you love. So, like, I love making soap. I started making cold processed soap just more recently, and I got so into it because it's so satisfying. There's so much to it, so artistic. You can really be creative with it. And to some people that can be overwhelming when you have too many choices, but I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I haven't done it lately because I've been so busy keeping up with my stock has been flying off the shelves. So I've had to keep making that, and I don't get time to do soap. But, if I was forced to make soap every day, I don't think I would like it that much.
Yeah.
One of those things where I want to feel creative passion blossom in me, and then I want to do it.
Yes.
That inspiration has to be there. And that's when you're in a good place, when you have that inspiration. That's what I was saying earlier about a human trait,
Yeah.
Like humans are incredible. When you see what people can do, I'm mind blown.
Yeah. All the time.
All the time.
Oh my God. And we still always manage to break through some barrier and get somewhere we thought we could never be. And it's pretty amazing. And I like that you brought that up, that inspiration, because it is something that, can transform yourself. But the magic of it too is that it can then, kind of infect other people and transform them as well. And so it just kind of like travels through the whole network over and over again. So, and it's another aspect of, like we were saying earlier, of when you are, doing something for yourself or working on yourself or inspiring yourself or letting inspiration be in you, then you're also, that is affecting the world and that is transforming the world around you. And that's kind of our superpower, that whatever we're doing in ourselves is actually going to manifest in the world around us as well.
I remember, when was it? So in naturopathic college, we have 3 years of all didactic learning. So it's all course work, and there's lots of hands-on in between there as well. 3rd year gets kind of hot and heavy with that. And then 4th year is your clinic year, and you're basically seeing patients all day long, and you have a schedule and so forth. And I remember when I first started to get into a flow with talking to a patient, and I feel this inspiration come through me, like this fire almost. And I would always ride with that. So when that happened, I would just trust what was coming out of my mouth. It would always be the perfect thing that for that person to hear, and that was what that thing they needed to take away, that was going to inspire them to do whatever it was needed to do, whatever they came to me about, right? And that was when I was like, oh, I think I really like doing that. I think I really like when I listen to that little flame, and it's almost as if there's an intimacy there where you're picking up something from them and just saying it right back to them, so that they can hear it, right?
Yes, this is exactly, I think you're describing like how I teach. I very rarely am like presenting a bunch of information or facts or lecturing or whatever. I'm more often like, here, let's try this thing. And then people start doing it. And then, they'll start talking to me about like a problem, and I'll just start repeating back to them like what they're saying. And then they'll solve their own problem. And they're like, wow, thanks. And I'm like, I really didn't do anything unless my superpower is kind of that process you just described. But I think that is what so many people need. And I think, this is part of what tarot is as well, for me, at least when people are getting readings, is that really I'm, here's the cards and here's what they're saying and here's me describing the cards, but you're the one who actually then like takes that and like transforms it into something that is meaningful for you and, apply it to whatever's going on with your life. And so there's an interaction and it goes kind of 3 ways, but it's a similar sort of process.
Really you're using a piece of art in a way to hone in on all of that, right? Like you're picking something up, but then if you have an anchor point that helps you to focus it in a way that the other person can then be relayed to them, then you can have quite an intimate experience using anything. I even had tarot cards that there's nothing on them; they're just smooshes of color.
That's awesome.
It doesn't need to be the traditional or any of those harsh symbols necessarily. Like it can be anything, or it can be coins, or people would use regular playing cards or whatever.
Right.
Because the point is, it's a tool.
Yes.
It's a tool. Now, what was interesting is with my spiritual teacher, I used a lot of tarot cards and pendulums and all these things. And she said to me, that's fine. You can do that and you can use that. But what she said is, But what you're trying to do is you're going to eventually not need it.
Yes.
Because it's going to, all you're doing is you're using it to practice what is really happening inside of you. And then you're going to master that and you don't need it anymore. And it's true, I haven't needed it for a long time. I still have the cards and stuff, but I don't consult them. I don't need to consult them now because because I do a lot of Reiki, I do distance Reiki a lot. And when I have a Reiki client, you know, I can see, I have a bit, I guess that's a medical medium who can see inside someone.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So I ran out of water. And the medical, I can see, like I feel inside the body. So that empathy part is very helpful, right? If someone has a problem, then I can connect with them and I can go in and I can see what's happening.
Yeah.
And then I can send them light and I can try to correct it that way. And then afterward, have a conversation with them and they'll tell me what their experience was. And then I'll tell them what my experience was. And it's just the same level of having a tarot card reading where you're connecting with one another, and one of the person's the receiver and the other person is the grounder or whatever. Like there's a tower and a grounding rod, and you're looping the energy around to try to sort something out. Right?
Have you ever seen these people? God, I can't remember what it is, but there's these people who I've been at 2 spiritual fairs in my life and I've seen them at both. And they literally want you to just sit there and receive energy from them. They're like praying at you basically, and they don't want you to give them anything. They don't want you to even like give it back to them or whatever. They just want you to receive. And that process for them is somehow transformative or whatever. It kind of reminds me of that. I guess it's different though, because it's just going one way.
It probably isn't.
Yeah, it can't be, right?
Probably is. It's just on a different level of things. Like I remember when I first started to do some serious meditation, I didn't have a car. And so when I was going to school, I would be on the trains. I had a bus ride and a subway ride. And people, even if the bus wasn't full, they would always sit very close to me or next to me. And all the time, the ones who would sit right next to me would fall asleep every time. And I was like, what is this? Like some sort of strange, do I give them narcolepsy? Like, what is this?
You have a narcoleptic energy.
Right. But what I realized is they were picking up something off of my field that they needed. And because I was fueling my field on a regular basis, I had very good vibrational hygiene. That they didn't, that it was just an unspoken agreement that you can come sponge some off me, dude. You'll be all right after this, right?
That's so sweet.
And that's what was happening. And I learned that as well firsthand going to India. And I met this gentleman and he said, I'd like to take you to my guru. He's a very big guy. Like he's well known, and there's a lot of gurus in India, but he was a very wealthy Indian, which is, a different subtype of Indian. And anyway, so he took me to this man. And so what happened is I walked into the temple and I was instructed to sit down, and then there were some stairs and then a platform, and then it was pretty close. And then the guru came in and he sat down and we, greeted him and so forth. And so here I am thinking I'm going to get some profound wisdom and something's really is going to happen here. And it was all kind of woo. And he's like, so tell me, how is your mother? I'm like, my mother? Fine. Oh, that is very good. Tell me, how is your father? I'm like, my father's great. And so do you have any siblings? And like, he was just making small talk. And I'm going, this guru is making small talk with me. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I just went with it. And then I left totally perplexed. And it wasn't until pretty way later when I realized the whole purpose of that was to sit in his energy field for a certain amount of time. And so I could gain whatever wisdom it was that he was carrying in his field, someone who meditates 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And
Wow.
that's was important for me to understand about electricity, the dielectric fields, like what's going on with magnetism, this, whatever we are in reality is about, right? And
Right.
that was, but it was like an aha moment where, yeah, we have energy fields, people.
Oh, yeah.
And there are people who can actually see them with their eyeballs, like you. There you go. Right? Barbara Brennan, you know, Hands of Light, that book, Hands of Light.
Mm-mm.
It's a really good book. It was quite an eye opener for me because she was fully clairvoyant. Like, I'm not clairvoyant, I'm clairsentient, but I'm not clairvoyant. She can see like in detail. So she was like writing down the fields and all the colors and all the chakras and what happens when people have different thoughts, what comes out of them.
I don't necessarily see each chakra necessarily, but I see the field and I can see the colors change as people think and have different emotions. And so I've developed my own, and I developed all of this before I really had ever encountered other people's ideas of what it was or what it meant. And so my, what colors mean to me do not necessarily match what other people say once I started researching it. Because for a while I was just basically I went to treatment and it was the first time I'd been sober for a long time, and everyone was glowing and I was like, I fucking broke my brain, like like this is not normal. And I told my sister and I was like, dude, everyone glows and it's fucked up and like I'm scared. And she's like, no, you see auras. And I was like, what the fuck is an aura? And so that's the first time I really noticed it. And then, like I said, I kind of just started noticing like, oh, when people are like feeling and, thinking about these types of things, this is the colors that are more prominent. And so I can see like those changes. I don't necessarily see each, chakra. And so, but I think, there's these pictures people take, of the auric fields allegedly. And, I don't see that same thing at all. So,
well,
I don't know what the difference is.
What I learned by this process of tuning into somebody is you have to filter it through your own ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means you have a template that you can use and you identify it and you make the colors to what makes sense to you. So
yeah,
that's why when people go to mediums or they read all this psychic stuff, and you got to take that with a grain of salt, because all got to filter through that individual's ego. And that means their beliefs and their biases and all of those things can be imprinted on the material that they're bringing forth. And unless they're very clean with that and they don't have any, they've done their subconscious clearing, right? So they brought everything to the front, to the light, as they say, from the subconscious to the conscious. It's going to be tainted. It's not going to be 100% accurate.
That's a good point.
And when you're doing any type of reading, like I had to train myself when I see a color or when I see a shape or when I get smell. I got smells. Unfortunately,
yeah, I
have the nose of a bloodhound, so lucky me, I smell it all too.
Oh God.
Yeah, like, thanks. And it got worse after I had a baby.
I was gonna ask. I was like, that's
and it never goes away.
Yeah.
It's just there forever. And that I had to train myself on what that meant. Like, you make your own codes, basically.
That makes me feel better, because that makes a lot of sense to me.
So when you get that means this.
Yeah.
But how are you going to know unless you make your own key? You make your own translation.
Right.
Right. And it takes time to develop that. And then you get good at it. And that's why you go to somebody who's more seasoned, usually when you go to Lilydale or you go to a place where there's a lot of these mediums, you want to go to someone who's older, who's done it a long time, because they're going to have their system pretty much set, and you're going to want to know the level of their ego. So if they've, they're arrogant, then you're not going to really take that with a lot of grains of salt, right?
I liked the advice I got, which was a while ago. I was told, if you're looking for a teacher, if you're looking for a therapist, if you're looking for a hairstylist, like, it doesn't matter who you're looking for. Whoever you're looking for, make sure that whatever they have going on for themselves is similar to what you would want for yourself. Right? If their hair is like fucked up and you hate it, you probably shouldn't go to them as a hairstylist. If they're, horribly sick, it seems like, and like not very well themselves, that's not a good doctor to go to. Like, if their aura's muddy, like, that's not a good whatever, so I like that.
Parameters. I mean, that if that's a parameter, so everyone's gonna have parameters that work for them, and that's similar to what we just said. Like, so that's a parameter that person who told you that works for them.
Yeah.
And they're telling you the parameter and you're going, yes, I like that, or that resonates with me, and that will also work for me. But that might not work for everybody,
True.
right? That's the thing. So it could be that you go to the piano player who doesn't know how to play piano, but she's a good teacher.
Yeah.
Or you go to someone whose hair is a mess, and why it's a mess is because she's doing such hard work for other people.
That's a good point.
Not able to take care of her own hair, right? So you don't know that, but if that's your system that you're working with, then you feed that system, and then that's going to be the feedback you get, right?
Yeah.
Or not, or you'll test it.
Because then you could come up with that situation where it's like exactly the opposite, and you were just, missed it because you were stuck on your system.
Right. Or you hit menopause, and then everything changes, and you have to go back to the drawing board with absolutely everything that you thought you knew. And
Yay!
all over again. Yay! That's fun. Yeah. Menopause. And another thing I wanted to mention was we were talking earlier about mushrooms. Is a lot of women, especially because it doesn't happen. There's andropause in men, which can be a problem. But the majority of problems I'm seeing is in menopausal women. They are losing their minds because we've poisoned the environment so severely with false estrogens or xenoestrogens through pesticides and chemtrail fallout and foodstuffs and all the plastics in the air and all of these chemicals and drugs. And they all mimic estrogen, so many of them. And when you have so much of that in your environment, then that means your progesterone is going to start to dip down. So most people are going to be, whether it's relative or it's actual, they're going to have more of these bad estrogens in their body. And then you hit menopause when the estrogens are full on and the progesterone's super tanked, and you are legitimately like a PMS person forever, right? Like you can't think.
Please, God, no.
And I've seen women, they crack at this time, and then they don't know what's happening to them. And they, of course, go to their MDs who don't know anything about health, and they get put on drugs and psych drugs that are going to mess up their mind even more and deplete their nutrients even more. And then they're not going to be able to even think through any of the experience or figure it out for themselves at that point because they're so heavily drugged.
Yeah.
And then I might have family members pressuring them to do things or other situations, and they're completely unpinned. And I've seen a lot of these women lately, and they've been like this for like 15 years or something terrible. And all they would have needed was some progesterone cream, some natural progesterone cream, magnesium and vitamin D, probably a good fish oil wouldn't hurt, and a B multi in the morning, a little bit of exercise, and they would be able to manage what they're going through, right? So it's tragic. And the MDs, when they do go and they go at this with menopause actually everything really tanks. All your hormones tank, but the xenoestrogens are still riding high. They give them estrogens. They give them synthetic estrogen, which is a known cancer causer.
Wow.
On the books, like it causes cancer. It gives breast cancer and ovarian cancer, endometrial cancer. And you're like, oh, but it gives cancer, right? Yeah, but it's better because then whatever else are we going to do? It's like progesterone.
A lot of things.
Lots of things. Yeah, like diet and exercise and vitamin D. That's the backbone of all your hormones. And like, what are you doing? You know? And so then they come with more synthetic estrogens, which is already part of the problem. It is bizarre. I just shake my head a lot. I already know the stories now. I've actually heard them all so many times now that when someone comes and tells me the story, I'm like, okay, I'm going to finish the story for you.
Yeah.
Here's what's going to happen. And then they're like, oh, wow, how'd you know that? I'm like, yeah, because I've heard it 1,000 times. This is exactly the thing that they do to people. And they said, now here's how you're going to fix it, right? Here's what you're going to do. And they get rid of the false estrogens when they use natural progesterone. Now there's herbals as well that you can use, but usually I just start them on the cream, get them detoxed fully. They can build their progesterone now for a while, and that's the real usefulness. Then they're going to stay young and have their brain work for them. And then they can do like black cohosh and red raspberry leaf and some of these other, botanicals that support the hormone systems, and licorice root help the adrenal glands. Because that's the thing, when you go through menopause, your ovaries stop sending signals to the thyroid. Okay. And what happens is now the adrenals take on the double duty. So they're the role that the ovaries used to do. And if you're already going in stressed to menopause, like you're already burnt out, you're already post-traumatic stress, you're already anxiety, you're already there, good luck with that. You're going to lose your mind, right? Because now your adrenals have to work even harder.
You already have adrenal failure, and now you're going to go into this.
Adrenal fatigue.
Wow.
Really, adrenal exhaustion is very, very rare. But adrenal fatigue is pretty common. And then it's going to set it up to the fact that now you're going to be under such immense stress. And, you know, when you're stressed, you don't think and you can't sleep and you can't digest. So then you start to get gut problems, and there's a gut-brain connection. So then you're not making serotonin, which is made in the gut for the brain. And then that starts to go haywire. And then I just say, here's the magic mushrooms. Start with that. And you can use licorice root extract if you don't have hypertension. I have a really nice one by Wise Woman Herbals that's delicious. It's just like a liquid. It's so, I love it. Like, how much can I eat
Yeah. You're like, this medicine is candy. I like this one.
I really like my tinctures.
Well, so I know you said it before, but as we're heading into sort of closing things out, where can people go to get all of your awesome products? Because I know I'm going to go there next.
Well, I have my website. It's yummymummy-emporium.org, and the alternative site is yummymummy-emporium.ca. And where I'm at right now is the current website I've built it all myself. So I did it through a website builder that's it's called Weebly. I never use them. Okay.
I hate Weebly.
So they're terrible.
Yeah.
And I will say that as loud as I possibly can, because they've hoodwinked me into a site that I can no longer upgrade. So how am I supposed to then I have payment processor issues because there's like glitches and doesn't work with new phones, and and I still have to pay them money, and they've basically dinosaured my website. Like, it's terrible, I know. Yeah. So had I known that, I wouldn't have invested all my hours into building that site. Anyway, a wonderful, incredible man popped into my store and said, I'll build you a website. Because sometimes really beautiful things like that happen in my life. My spiritual teacher will call those moments of grace.
Yay.
The grace periods where it's easy for a second. Because you did earn it. And then, so that website template is built, and that's the .ca. And now I have to get to work and put the content on it.
Yeah. Are you going with WordPress by chance, or what's your new?
I think it is WordPress. I'm pretty sure. I didn't even worry about it because he knows all that stuff really well. I'm pretty sure we went with WordPress. GoDaddy as the host, and then, I think that's the main one.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go there. yummymummy-emporium.org.
Yeah.
Yay, that's exciting. And then I feel like you've already shared a billion and one amazing words of wisdom, but I always ask my guests at the end to share, your final words of wisdom for people as they're going to walk away from this. What would you like them to focus on or think about or reflect upon?
Really, I'd like them to start thinking about how they can be their own doctors. Try to remember the home remedies that we used to have. Buy a good book on home remedies that you like. Learn about homeopathic medicine. It's not hard to learn, and it can really be a profound way of dealing with a lot of issues that come up again and again in your life. But really take some control and some power back over your health, because if you keep giving it away to individuals who have other agendas, then you really are setting yourself up for an early grave. It's not, unfortunately, what we would hope for. So really, self-empowerment through doctoring yourself is really what I would say to that.
I love that. That's a beautiful answer. And I just suddenly had the question too. Do you people can go to your site and get these products that you've put together that are all really amazing and helpful, but do you do any one-on-one sort of counseling or health counseling or whatever from a distance that people might access? Or is that okay?
I have sorry, you broke up, but I do have a Monday and a Wednesday that I've segmented for clients.
Cool.
They can book me right now. They can book me on my Facebook app. I have a booking app, and I am in the process of hiring a receptionist or a personal assistant to help me because it's gotten a little out of control where I'm getting requests and I can't get back to the people because I'll get over 100 contacts, whether it's through email or social media a day. And I find with everything I'm doing, I'm really having a hard time managing it. And so I've been hiring some staff for personal, like in the store here,
Cool.
but also I'm hiring someone to help me with social media, someone to help me with booking. So just be patient with me with that process. But yes, I do. I'm book about a month ahead or so for that. And I do have particular intake forms and I have different layers of it. So if you just want to book me for half an hour, you've got something sort of quick you want to deal with, or you don't know what products to use for something before you're going to purchase something, you're not sure, then just book me for like 15 minutes or half an hour or something just to have that clarity.
Cool.
And then I have bigger options as well with like full reports and protocols and things like that. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's a lot of work, but I'm trying to, now that I'm 10 years, 11 years in, I'm just trying to refine protocols and refine ways of communicating. And that's why I do all the videos I do, because I'm trying to help as many people as I can, because I'm just me.
Yes.
And it's really overwhelming sometimes when everyone like comes at you with help me. And it's like, wow, how do I manage this, right? And so that's why I decided to do the videos to teach you all this stuff. And eventually I'm going to put that into like online courses.
Cool.
And because again, I'm passionate about you doctoring yourself. I don't need you to keep coming to me. And actually I give everyone who sees me as much as I can so that they have lots to digest and lots to work through and lots to do. And then I encourage them to watch the videos so that they're trained. Like they're trained. They know how to use vitamin C and what colloidal silver is and how to use chlorine dioxide solution properly and how to get DMSO into their lifestyle and those things that they're going to come to again and again for any sort of condition, right? And then they won't need to go to their doctors and be set up to fail, because that's all they do, right? They put you through tests to scare you. And you don't know the results. You can't even read half the results. They depend on your ignorance and they depend on your fear to sucker you into all kinds of random tests. I just posted actually an article that talked about was just one hospital in the States, I believe, or is the UK. Anyway, there was just one example of one hospital. There was like over 600 cases where they were misdiagnosed as having cancer when they didn't.
God.
So can you imagine how many false positives they're going through? And that's just one hospital, one example.
Yikes.
And they're getting treatments and radiation and all this garbage and fear and feeling like they're going to die and all this stuff, which does cause disease. Like those things they do to them now actually does cause disease.
Yeah.
Right? And it's alarming. So the more you can prevent yourself from going down that road, the better off you'll be. Because really, our power is to decide with our purchasing power and with our choices, right? So like I remember always in university say, vote your dollar, right? It's like, well, it's true in a sense where you're going to go into something that you believe in, and you're not going to patronize something that is actually does harm on a large scale, right? So the more we can make that a dinosaur,
Yes.
the better. And then it'll force them to have to adapt or change, or then they're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the hopeful part.
What a beautiful vision to end the show on. Thank you for that. Full empowerment and taking the system back and making it into what we would like to see. So, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom, according to Dr. Amanda Vollmer. Amanda, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It has been more than a pleasure. It's been an honor and very informative and helpful for so many people. So, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
Awesome.
We'll talk again soon.
It's been fun. And you can hang up now if you want to, or stick around for the little ending I have. But either way, I hope to talk to you again soon.
Great. Yeah, we'll talk again soon. Thanks.
Awesome. So this body is our temple and our portal to this plane of existence. Though most aspects and influences that control our society seem to want it to unravel, they are not the final say in what we manifest within our physical beings. Luckily, they are not even the strongest say in how things go for us. We have ultimate control of what we focus on creating, the nutrition we take in order to create it, and the will with which we move forward. So until you perfect your temple, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
It's a one-on-one lesson, so do your homework. Make your dome hurt while up on earth. My bones are blessed from holy dirt. Vibes manifested to words that told me search for verbs and adjectives to describe birth. Worth more than one can speak, while the tongue beats a weak, a sour taste in your mouth, bittersweet. Words can also kill you when you sleep. Mind condition, low frequencies while the subconscious mind listens. I can tell a vision filled with lies disguised as truth, and spread it like the word to the youth. Watch the tube. A place where the God gets booed is sorcery. To recreate the God forgery does more than meets the eye. Not too many know. Just hit me flow like the eye of Horus Penio. Yeah, not ready to leave until we believe we're free to go. You hear me, yo?
Sculpted from the ether, the material will eat ya. Stuck on this plane, lanes use jet fuel to greet ya. The dimensional three ain't beating me on top of the fourth. Didn't climb Jacob's ladder to squab with a sword. Forged with Yggdrasil, branched down. Try quiet your lamps now. Ascension past the matter, that they slam out they damn mouths. We ain't on land now, but they over in a stand. Sacrificing wisdom, hoarding dumber, kosher, wicked hands. Putting faith in worthless worship of the mortals. Artificial portals, mass ingestion of the black goo. Bioengineered morsels, conversing with machine elves. Bypassing maggots, they stuck on Android screens now. I'm scrolling emerald tablets. Moloch living lavish, off the backs of the savage. Them clasped hands at the Sabbath. Smack of energy damage, they done twisted the tongues. But nanotech in the lungs, the awakening's begun. All they really can do is fucking run.